Looks like everybody's running late today, so we apologize. So to get ourselves organized and get this show on the road. Okay, we do have a council person here today that I think would like to speak before we actually get down into the agenda. But I want to talk about the appeal of the decisions for the Historic Zoning Commission. Pursuant to the provisions of 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Law, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County by way of statute writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decisions of the Historic Zoning Commission. We will be presenting the consent agenda, and at that time, we will present it all at once. If there are any ones that you would like for us to hear, if you will raise your hand, we will take those off the consent agenda. At this time, I want to go ahead and get the approval of the minutes of January 15th. Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And at this time, Councilman Davis, would you like to come forward? Welcome.
Commissioners, thank you for your volunteering your precious time to serve on this committee. Many of you, I think all of you, I've had the privilege of appointing or reappointing. All of you, I've loved your work. You've made some great decisions, and I support you. And I just want to thank you for the service to our community. The house on McFerrin, the Spanish-style bungalow, I'm in full support. The owners came to the Greenwood Neighborhood Association. Greenwood is our historic neighborhood association that helped, along with Maxwell Heights, to establish the the conservation overlay for the area. And the great thing is the neighbors were in full support because before the neighborhood, before we had such a great historic commission, and before, we had some great commissioners like yourself, there were a lot of Spanish-style homes, older ones in the neighborhood, but they were torn down. And that was long before, the Historic Commission had the knowledge and the power like we have it now. And it's a great thing now that we have that. And if we had it back then many of these homes might have been preserved or saved. And I'm just asking, they've made some modifications. They've gotten approval from our neighborhood associations in that area. And they came, they spoke, they showed us. And also their architect has some other examples of Spanish-style buildings that look more modern, that aren't as, I don't want to call it old world, but, stuff that we've seen in the past. And he'll show you some of those things up there. One of the properties he shows you is also in my district, not that far from where this other home is. It's on the corner of Gallatin and West Eastland. It's where, Steve's Bar and Grill used to be, and that's a more modern style. It's right across the street from the barista parlor. And he's going to show you a few examples of how, we can still be in compliance with the commission and still look good and still give the people what they want in an older kind of Spanish colonial style home. I just want to thank you for your time and thank you for listening. I fully support the plan, and I just thank everyone for your hard work. Thank you.
Councilman, may I ask you a question? Is there a representative from the neighborhood that will speak, do you know, in support of that? Okay, all right. I'm just curious because you just said not at this point. We'll do it when
Greenwood leadership provided a letter of support for them.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. At this time, we'll present the consent agenda. Again, if any of these items you would like to see presented. There will not be an individual presentation for each item, but if you'd like to hear the full presentation, please raise your hand, and we'll take it off the consent agenda. If not, we'll consider this in one motion.
This month's consent agenda is 2008 19th Avenue South, new construction and addition to outbuilding, conversion to detached accessory dwelling unit. 2009 19th Avenue South, a setback determination. 129 South 11th Street.
May I back up? We are taking the 2009 19th Avenue off the consent agenda.
Is that right?
So we will hear that one. I'm sorry. Okay, I should have. Okay.
129 South 11th Street is new construction and addition. 1300 Fatherland Street, new construction and outbuilding. 1501 Ferguson Avenue, new construction, addition, and partial demolition. 1707 Primrose Avenue, new construction, addition, and partial demolition. And 618 Fatherland Street, new construction of an outbuilding and detached accessory dwelling unit. Staff finds that these applications meet design guidelines and recommends their approval.
I don't see anyone raising their hand have anything other than the one taken from the consent agenda. So do I hear a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented, with the one exception?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, at this time, we'll begin new business. Will we do the 2009 first?
Yes.
Okay. So this 2009 19th Avenue South is the one that we have pulled from the consent agenda, will be presented first.
Because it's been pulled from the consent agenda, I don't have a presentation for you beyond that middle image. But it has already been approved in terms of the massing and the scale and the height and the design. You approved that several months ago. What the applicant is coming back and asking for now is a reduction to the setback. And what happened was that a different property owner purchased that property several years ago, came to you, or last year, came to you, got an approval for a garage, and then built the concrete pad for it, and then didn't build the garage. Now, this new property owner wants to build on top of that existing parking pad, or base to the garage, and assumed that it met the condition, the 20-foot setback the 10-foot setback it originally needed to be, and it does not. And so now they're coming to you and asking for it to be reduced, which is a typical request for garages. And do you have any questions for me?
So you've got a 4-foot differential?
Right.
And Robin, sorry, you might have said this. Do the guidelines specifically call for a 10-foot setback?
No, that's the code, but you have the ability to set the correct setbacks.
So the guidelines are silent to alley setbacks? I know some of our districts have.
They just say that the building should be where is appropriate. And typically historic buildings were very close to property lines and to alleyways. And so you've pretty routinely allowed for those setback determinations.
Thank you.
This time is public hearing. As we do approach the public hearing, we ask the applicant to keep their comments to 10 minutes and would reserve 2 minutes for rebuttals. So be conscious of presenting any new information and try to keep from repeating other same ideas. All right? Okay. Anyone like to come forward and talk? Please come forward. If you'll give your name and address, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mitch Hodge. I'm the architect for this project. I had also worked on the original renovation a few years ago when they were originally planning to do a garage for this house, and we went through the process, and yes, it was approved for 10 feet. Since then, those owners had sold the house, and the new owners are wanting to build the garage as they thought this footprint was there, and since we've excavated, we've discovered that the original owners had poured the slab 4 feet in closer, so we've got a 6-foot setback on there. So that's all we're asking for. There is a garage just 2 doors down. They've already approved it. It's about 5 feet off, so this is nothing uncommon for that alley.
Okay, thank you.
That's all we're asking. Thanks.
All right. Any questions? All right. Thank you so much. I'll close the public hearing. Are there any comments, questions?
I just want to clarify, I think, that your recommendation is not based on the fact that the slab is there. I mean, we don't want to go down that slope. It's
Right.
based on the fact that it's a typical setback variance or differential that we've given before.
Correct. There have been cases where they've been even much closer than 6.
Okay.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move we approve staff recommendation.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? So move on to new business. Okay. 1719 Fifth Avenue North.
This project has several different components. There are several alterations planned for windows and doors, all of which are explained further in your staff recommendation, and which staff found met the design guidelines based on historic evidence. This is a picture from about 1968, I believe, with the exception of altering the size of the front door. The project also includes the removal of a non-historic outbuilding, which meets the design guidelines. What doesn't meet the design guidelines is the front addition, which has already been mostly completed, and this was based on a misunderstanding of the scope of work from their building permit. The partial demolition that required the removal of the front slope and porch of the building does not meet the design guidelines, since these are character-defining features. The addition does not meet Section 2A and F. This portion of the house is now almost 2 feet taller than it was originally. Generally, additions should be at the rear, and in some cases could be located at the side, but they've never been approved on the front. With the exception of replacing missing porches, we've never approved anything on the front. In addition, the front addition alters the existing roof line, so it's not removable without altering the form of the house, and so it doesn't meet Section 2B, 2A, and F. The project does not meet Section 2B1E for appropriate roof form because the original roof form of a cross gable with a shed roof has been altered to a cross gable with a shed roof dormer and a recessed porch. In summary, staff recommends removal of the non-historic outbuilding, alteration of the existing window dimensions and the side door dimensions based on historic evidence, and with the condition that staff approve the final window and door design materials. Staff recommends disapproval of the alteration of the primary entrance dimensions in the front addition based on the fact that it does not meet Section 5B1, 3B1E, and 2A and F, and further recommends reconstruction of the original roof form and porch.
Okay.
And I believe the applicant's here if you have any questions.
All right. Are there any questions of staff before we open the public hearing?
So the owner never did get a preservation permit?
Not a preservation permit, no.
Did the owner talk to staff or?
No, not till after the fact.
So there was nothing in codes that triggered the flagged it for your all's approval?
My understanding, and the applicant can tell you more about that, obviously, we weren't present for that discussion, but my understanding is he got a building permit for interior work only.
Okay.
And then, thought, well, this would be great too, and just kept going, as happens. But unfortunately, it just doesn't meet the guidelines.
Okay, thank you. All right, this item is over for public hearing. If there's somebody in the audience that would like to come and address us, please give your name and address.
I'm Derek Hovel. I live, 1719 Fifth is my residence. I've actually got a document for all of you. What's the easiest way for me to pass this out?
If you'll give it to Robin, we'll pass it.
You three are welcome to have a copy as well. Does everyone have a copy? I'll leave a pile up here for you all. So just to give you guys a little bit of a background, I moved down to Nashville about almost 2 years ago from St. Louis. I live in Germantown right now. I've kind of kept an eye out in the neighborhood since that time. I love the neighborhood. It's awesome. I did quite a bit of extensive research on the property as far as going to codes and talking about potentially building another garage, removing the I guess, non-historic garage that's on there right now. And just wanted to make sure that all my plans for the future of the home, I didn't really like it the way that it stood. So my lease was scheduled to end on January 31st of 2014, and I had a pretty aggressive timeline. With that in mind, I wanted to have everything in order and start as quickly as possible at closing on October 31st. So after checking the historic website and then also confirming with the codes department, I came to the conclusion they confirmed that I only needed a building permit. So whenever I went to the codes department, I told them that I had, again, many different plans for the home to renovate, but adding room for a second bedroom, as well as just the general interior, was my priority. So I applied for my building permit, and that's in Appendix A. And as my building permit states, the verbatim is rehab interior of single-family residence, no change to footprint, remain single-family residence, no second kitchen. So after rehabbing for 2 months, I received a stop work order on December 31st, and I believe that I received a stop work order for something that falls underneath my building permit. It doesn't say anything about no change to ridge line or no change to basically anything that I did. So it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. But as far as the historic website, as I mentioned earlier, I looked into whether or not my property was in the historic district, and if there were guidelines that I needed to follow whenever I was doing my renovations. On the homepage, that's in Appendix C, the frequently asked questions is highlighted in the bottom right corner. Is my property in a historic district is the first question. You guys can see the response, but it basically leads you to a map. Whenever I click on the map, basically my property was not in the historic preservation district, and it still isn't. So I went to that the historic website recommended me to use and said, I'm not in a historic zone. So I was like, okay, I only need my building permit. I'm good there. And then I also confirmed with the codes department. They said that no flags came up on my account or on my address. And from my understanding, I guess there should have been a flag that came up. So then after receiving the work order, like I said, I went back and I confirmed again that the map is still showing me as not in the historic zone. And then while I was looking at that, I also noticed the second question on the list, which reads, is my house historic? I believe that my house has been significantly modified from the form that it was back in that first picture, the first picture that you guys saw. It's got an all masonry front, which is not historic. All four sides of the home have been altered to vinyl siding, masonry, wood paneling, you name it. There's something on it. The garage that's on it right now is spray foam glued to the side of the home. It's just been heavily modified since the day that it was built. As far as the staff recommendation that Robin just gave, I wanted to point out one thing that concerned me. On the 6th page under background, the staff quotes that my building permit reads interior rehabilitation only, period. And however, there's no source that I'm aware of that reads this way, and none is referenced in the document. As I previously mentioned, my building permit reads rehab of interior single-family residence, no change to footprint, remain single-family residence, no second kitchen. This appears to be a fabricated misstatement by the staff making a recommendation and to support that I was doing something outside of my building permit. Since the first interactions with the historic department, I've tried to work with them and see how I can help get this all taken care of in a reasonable manner. I've tried to work with them in many different ways, but it feels like I've kind of been singled out and discriminated against compared to a lot of the new construction in the surrounding area. I like to pride myself on being a very detailed person and research a lot of projects, especially major ones like this. I just think that I did all of the homework that I was supposed to have done, or that any normal person would have done working on the home. I don't think that it's fair to ask a financial hardship of removing a project that was completed, or 95% completed, before I even received a stop work order. I never received any notification. It went straight into a stop work order. So I was kind of baffled by that. I'm trying to turn a significantly modified non-historic home into something that will add charm to the neighborhood. And I'm open to any questions that you guys might have.
Y'all have questions?
I do. One, when you went to the codes department, were you informed that this was a conservation overlay?
No. I specifically asked if it was in a historic zone or if there were any guidelines that I needed to follow whenever I was making the changes. And they said that no flags came up on my address.
Okay. Thank you.
When you applied for the permit, didn't you have to present drawings or anything?
No, they said, what are your plans? And I told them, I've got a couple different plans as far as I might kick out a wall to add a new bedroom, I might add a dormer, I might do this or that. And he said, well, this plan, this building permit will cover you as long as you do not change the footprint of the home. As far as any other interior or any other renovations that you're trying to do to your home for adding more space, including dormers, that I was covered on that building permit.
So you're raising the roof line doesn't require drawings to get a building permit?
No, it did not.
Electrical plans, you don't have to do any of that stuff? No, in the house.
Actually, joint question to staff on this. I guess my question being, the information of the conservation overlay seems to be, in my eyes, an overlook or oversight. So at that time, of course, conservation overlay was already designated, right, Robin? So if that property wasn't tagged under the overlay, can that be explained?
It is.
It is on the permit, but Robin, were you able to tell on the website whether the map was wrong?
It's there and it's correct. The design guidelines and the map were on there many months before it was even adopted, so that people would know it was coming and that they could review the design guidelines and so forth. Can't really speak to codes process or, what was said or...
But the website map that's in the guidelines, that shows the subject property in the area?
That's right.
I have screenshots, and you guys are welcome to pull it up online right now. It's, to the best of my knowledge, it's not updated. I would love to see any documentation that shows it, but I have documentation that shows it from the 17th, the last time and that's a screenshot from the 17th, just on Monday.
When was the Salem? It wasn't too long ago that the overlay was.
Preservation district, but not in the conservation. That's two different things.
If you guys refer to Appendix G, you'll see the star, that's my property, and then that lightly yellow area that says Historic Preservation District, I'm outside of that area.
Yeah, I think that's different than the Samtown Conservation Overlay.
I just pulled up the map and it is there. Today, it's there.
Yeah.
But it does show on the permit that it is in the conservation overlay.
I guess one question
Yes, sir.
I have for the applicant. How much does the addition that you've done there, what have you spent on that addition that you may have to take off if?
In the thousands of dollars, but I did all of the work myself with my brother-in-law is a contractor. but I can review the receipts, but as far as lumber, less than $2,000. But then it was me and 3 other workers' time that they were all family members of mine, so I didn't have to pay them.
Right. You lucked out there.
I know. It would have been very expensive had I gone to a contractor, I think, a general contractor.
Well, I guess I'm looking at the permit and seeing the estimated value of the construction at $10,000, and that seems low for, what has been done. But if it's all done with
Like I
free
said,
labor,
I've done all the work myself.
probably about right.
Pretty much every single weekend, nights, I've been over there. So.
Robin, is anyone from Codes here? Have you spoken with the plans reviewer that put together the application?
We have, again, it says interior only, so that's what they believed, that's what we believed. And again, this isn't really much of an issue of buildings process, because that's not the codes department, because that's not what this body does, but our department, and there was no preservation permit received.
So, if you don't mind me asking, if you keep on saying interior only, can you show me where it says that?
The permit says interior.
Okay, it says interior, and then it also says no change to footprint. So,
Well, that's not actually what triggers a preservation permit.
I'm just interested, I'm kind of curious because it says rehab of interior of single-family residence. It doesn't say no change to exterior. I think it says more with what it doesn't say. Rehab of interior of single-family residence, and if inevitably the exterior needs to change, it doesn't say that I can't change that.
I think there is that expectation, if it says interior, that it's for interior work.
I think that's up to interpretation. Obviously, that's why we're all here.
Well, clearly the codes department didn't send it to the historic commission or staff, despite that it was flagged as a neighborhood conservation overlay. I don't know if that was a mistake by the permit reviewer with codes, or a misunderstanding as to what the actual scope was.
I know that I've spoken to the director of codes, and he told me that he didn't think that this was right, how this is all kind of unfolding. He told me that someone in the historic department notified him and said that they had spoken to the owner of the house multiple times, and I had never heard of anything. I'm the only person who's ever doing work over there, so I can't imagine anyone that they would have spoken to. I contacted the previous owner in case they were contacting him, and he said that no one's ever reached out to him. And then all of a sudden I got a stop work order whenever, like I said, it came out of nowhere. No one ever contacted me in the middle of my work. I had my roofer roof it all in, and then 3 weeks after I finished all of my work on it, I got a stop work order. So I'm kind of not sure.
Okay, one question for Robin. Robin, as he's saying that there was correspondence between MHC and prior owner, is there record of that?
I'm sure I have it in my call sheets. The previous owner was talking about different addition options, so we talked to him multiple times about those additions. We didn't reach out to him, he came to us to ask for that. And it is our practice, if something's happening, to issue that stop work order immediately, because we do want the property owner to be able to quit, not put more money and more time into it if it doesn't meet the guidelines or if it's not permitted.
So the previous owner then obviously did know that it was in a conservation and came to you all to talk
Yes.
about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have any of that?
I don't have it with me today, but I don't know that that's really relevant.
Well, just the fact that owner didn't convey to the new owner that it was in a conservation overlay. I mean, and that's
which I don't know that
We can
that's
point fingers at
their responsibility.
This
yeah.
way all the time, but yeah. Okay. Do you all have any questions of the owner?
I don't really know what to say. This is the first time we've ever seen anything like this. I mean, if I was in the codes department, you came in and said, I want to build out some of my space for interior use only, I'm going to spend $10,000. I go, okay, the guy's going to add like 2 walls. I mean, you can't even build a kitchen for $50,000. I mean, to think that you're going to totally modify your house and add a ridge, redo the ridge line and add a dormer, and that's all within $10,000. I would just go, there's no way I would ever thought that.
I would be happy to get you all
No,
my
I'm
receipts
not. I'm not talking
okay.
about what you did as did all your labor and all that. But if you came to me and I was in codes and I said, "How much are you going to spend?" and you said probably about 10, and I'm going to do all this interior work, I go, I would assume that you would be doing nothing on the outside just because the money involved is so small.
I notified him. I told him that I would be even kicking out a dormer, and he told me that was under my permit, as it says, no change to footprint.
Do you have that in writing from him?
Yes, it says no change to footprint.
No. You said dormer. Now, when you start dormers, this whole group, this whole room goes up, because dormers have always been a really conflict of where we can apply that.
And the codes department absolutely should know. And if we have the people within the codes department that don't know that a dormer triggers within a conservation overlay, then there is a real problem, and you probably would get more sympathy. So
Well,
I don't know
like
if you have
I
any-
said, this was the conversation that I had with the codes
So
department.
you
whenever I
actually
went.
told them about adding a dormer? Do you know who you spoke with? I mean, do you
It was
have
an
that?
older gentleman with white hair.
Well, I mean, you don't have that documented, or
It was a conversation, like I said. And
was this a conversation as you applied for the
yes, ma'am.
permit?
Yeah, and I received the building permit that day, and he said, just make sure you don't change the footprint, and then you're covered under this building permit.
I didn't sign up for this.
I know you guys are all volunteers.
Okay.
I'm throwing a lot at you. I'm sorry.
Okay, are there any other questions of the owner? And then we're going to close the comment section. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address us? Okay.
Have you tried? I mean, is there a solution that exists between you and the staff on what either a change in the dormer or a change?
So whenever I originally spoke with Robin, she said that I had 2 options. One was to comply. I asked her what she specifically meant by comply, and she said basically tear it all off and put it back to original. And then my other option was to present this argument to you all. And
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, good. I think I'm going where you were going. Robin, there's no way to continue to modify or adjust some of the existing modifications to put it within the guidelines? I mean, I'm trying to think of a less expensive, less destructive solution.
The reason you don't see these very often is because we are able to do that. The majority of the time, because it's, things happen all the time that don't meet the permit or done without a permit. And 99.9% of the time, there is a solution and we can work with the property owner and take care of that. And so it never even comes to you. This one's on the front. It is a front addition that dramatically changes the look of the house. It's not an issue of, well, maybe we can just bring the dormer down a little bit or we can change the eave a little bit. As far as I know, in the history of this commission, a front addition on a historic home has never been approved, unless it was reconstructing something. So we didn't see any solution since it's right on the front of the building.
Even if we were to assume that there had been so many changes to the structure itself that it was no longer historic, we would
Right.
still not be considered a front addition.
If it were not historic, certainly, you've done that before. The form is still there, though, and so we've pretty consistently said if the form of the house is there, then it is still historic. Maybe the siding has changed. In this case, it has. Window sizes have changed a little bit. There's an addition on the back. But those are, typically have not been things that have risen to the level of being not historic.
So we did go through the exercise of it,
Yes.
of is it conforming or non-conforming?
Right.
Okay.
One thing, just as you guys, as you're hearing this for your first time, whenever I heard all this, my initial reaction was, how can I work with them and get this all taken care of? And I've tried to do that, but to no avail, obviously. If you guys refer to Appendix H, you'll see both sides of me are new constructions. I think that my home is the most historic looking one, even with my dormer. I know that you guys have never approved a front dormer, as Robin keeps referring to, but if you look at my home and compare it between the three of those, I think that mine is the most historic looking, if that's what you guys are trying to achieve.
Robin, those homes, were those built before or permitted before the overlay was put in place?
Yes, they were.
So this commission didn't approve those, did it?
Right.
I hear your point,
Yeah.
but I think that's one of the reasons why this overlay was put in place, right?
Yeah, from my understanding, I think the reason, when you look at it from the big picture, why this is all in place, it's to preserve the old homes and not tear them down and build the shotgun-style homes. And I'm trying to preserve it. I'm trying to make it better, so.
Well, I think the staff has done what they're charged with doing and bringing it to us and not necessarily finding a unacceptable compromise or a compromise that wouldn't meet the intent of the guidelines. We do have a circumstance where, it's sort of got a trial here with only one side represented in terms of what happened at the codes department, but whether the applicant was fully forthcoming or just not clear in terms of what his plans were. I'm not sure where I'm headed with this, but
I think you're raising a good point. It really is one side of the story. One option may be to ask the applicant to defer and come back with the person from codes. We can track it from this permit, I'm sure, and understand the other side, because I think the permit on its face is pretty clear. It's for interior work, it's $10,000. It says neighborhood conservation overlay on the permit. He's not a contractor. Something got screwed up.
And the codes department always, if there's any question, I believe, flags it and sends it to the Historic Commission for review.
Right.
On page 14, you're showing proposed plans.
Yes, ma'am.
When were those developed?
I put those together again, it all goes back to the amount spent on this. One of my friends is an architect, and he drew up the plans so I could have these to show them to you, opposed to just pictures.
Okay, so this is after the fact.
This is not completed. This is what I'm planning on the house looking like if I could finish all of my work.
Those are the drawings he submitted with this application.
These?
Right.
Okay,
So this is
okay.
more.
But that was not presented to,
I have no idea about that, but this is what he's presented, because this project's bigger than the dormer. There's also those windows and doors on the side and the demolition. So that's for everything.
okay.
Robin, so the applicant understands his options. If he chooses not to defer this and wants us to act on it today, and we turn down his request and go with staff recommendation, where is he in the process at that point, and what are his options?
Mr. Gee, if I may, John Michael from the Metro Legal Department, and advising the commission today. On that point, once the board takes an action, any party who feels they're recipient of an adverse action from a board or commission then has the ability to appeal that decision, just as read by Vice Chair today, via writ of cert to Chancery Court. We always encourage people to promptly confer with their own legal counsel so that they can make sure they're meeting whatever timing guidelines or deadlines may be in place at that point. But to the heart of what I think your question is, Mr. Gee, today is not some end of the road, absolute end of the road for an applicant if they don't get an application granted or something like that, whether it be this one or any other applicant.
But he couldn't request for it to come back before us.
Typically, sometimes there's a motion.
Additional information, or if the Codes Department was to come and support his case that, that they screwed up or whatever.
I hear you. Some boards take up motions for rehearings for information that was not available at the date of the original hearing. The facts that have been presented today by both staff and by the applicant indicate that that's probably not the case. It sounds like whatever information was available today, is nothing different than what's going to be available next time around. Now, if the board chooses to defer taking action on this, and I'll have to double check to see if that leaves an application deferred by law. I don't think that you can. I think you could invite that, but couldn't necessarily defer it on your own. But if there was a request by the applicant to defer it to a later date, then you could hear testimony from other witnesses if you wish. However, a motion to rehear would not necessarily open the door to all testimony, documents, anything that might have otherwise been available today. I'm sorry for the long answer, but I hope that was clarifying.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Very good. Could I speak?
Absolutely.
For myself, speaking for this commissioner here, I feel like I'm just dangling in the wind here because we just don't have the other side. I'm not prepared to make a decision on this. It's just, we are hearing your side. We need to hear from the person, the white-haired gentleman that you spoke to at Codes, to find out why this application or the building permit didn't trigger whatever it was supposed to with the Historic Commission. I just am not prepared to do this today, and I would invite you to defer this so that we can get that person here and hear the whole story.
I would be happy to, but I think, is he retired, from my understanding? I think she was, I had spoke with her.
I think that is correct. I think I saw.
Well, they don't just go away when they retire. Sometimes they show up on the Historic Zoning Commission. Go find him.
Okay.
You got to get this thing prepared, because this is just a case. Really, it sounds like first impression to me. I'm the newest commission member, and I'm listening to the other commission members. They don't seem to have run across this before. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm saying this seems to be like a case of first impression. I would invite you to really seriously consider deferring this and getting your ducks in a row here so that we can figure out what's happened here, because we're left dangling here.
Yeah. And that's why I tried to put this document together that outlined it as well as I could. I know that personally it's taken time out of my workday today, and I would prefer to see this kind of taken care of. I see where you're coming from, but I think what it'll all come down to is what the building permit says.
Well, you did a good job, and I commend you for the job that you've done. It just didn't go far enough. We have to hear what happened down there at Codes, because it should have this should have triggered information to the Historic Commission. For some reason, it didn't.
To be clear, if we're going to base our decision on what the building permit says, that's easy for me. I mean, it says neighborhood conservation overlay. It only contemplates interior improvements. That would be the end of the story.
Right.
So I think it's in your best interest, and as Rose said, invite you to defer to find the gentleman you talked to who may be willing to admit that a mistake was made, and we can look at this further.
Yeah, well, my question is, okay, we do that. Does that affect what we're here to do, to say, does it meet the guidelines? And so I don't want to give him, I mean, he certainly has his right to do that, but that in no means sets it up that we're going to agree with him if somebody even made a mistake. So,
Well, that is a good
I
point.
want to know that this would be a huge prerequisite in setting a precedent. And so, I mean, we've got to consider that too, that even though someone comes in, I messed up, we still have a duty to do as our commission for the historic zoning. So I'll throw that out. It's certainly.
Well, the point is well taken, and I don't want to suggest that if you bring him in here that it's going to change it. I just don't, I hate for you to have gotten bad information down at codes and be the victim of having to put this building, of doing what you did to your home and being left out in the wind. But so I don't know whether it's going to make any difference or not ultimately.
Okay. And I mean, it's up to you. I mean, you now have, I guess, an option of deferring or asking us to go ahead and close a public hearing and.
So could you explain the process of deferring to me as far as what?
I think it's up to you to defer.
Well,
Is it not?
if the staff could, if he asked for a deferral, could you explain what that means?
Yeah, the short version is you're basically asking to bring this back to the next appointed meeting, and you'd be the first item on the agenda that day that the board takes up and considers. On that occasion, the purpose of the deferral, if you request one, would be to bring in, I guess for want of a better phrase, another witness to speak to what the confusion was. Or any additional information. Again, that's if it's your request to do so. If you do not request to do so, the board will take action one way or the other today.
Okay.
And it has to be the next meeting in terms of the timing of action, our action. We have to act within a certain period of time, so it would be next month.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. So are you saying that you would?
I would like to defer
Okay.
until next month.
All right. Granted. Okay.
That was
Thank
easy.
you.
Do we need to make a motion?
Do you have any further questions?
I don't think if he asked to defer, I think that is, we don't need a motion, do we? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. You keep me in line.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving on, 1818 Fifth Avenue North.
Whoa. Uh-oh. What's that? It's in there. Sorry about that. I got my PowerPoints mixed up. This application today is an application to construct a new two-family dwelling on a vacant lot. The form of the building is more or less that of a gabled L, two-story house, at least 2 stories on the right side, 1.5 story on the left. The drawing here that's on the screen is actually newer than what was sent in your packets. More or less, massing is the same, but the roof has been modified a little to lower the ridge, and so that the two ridges are closer together. The higher ridge there being 31 feet tall from grade, and houses in the area range from 18 to 33 feet. So staff found this to be the height of this to be compatible. The higher eave on the right side will be 21 feet. The lower eave, basically the porch eave, will be 11 feet. Staff felt that that lower eave gave the appearance of the second story being taller than the first story. So we would recommend as a condition that the porch roof and eave be raised so that the proportions are more appropriate. And in doing that, also to make the porch rack and porch floor thicker, essentially just beef up the first story. The two halves of the building, as I think I said it, it's a duplex. The two halves will be offset with the front edge of the building aligned with the existing historic house to the north. It's actually not the adjacent house there because that one has been demolished. But then the next house up to the north is historic. The width of this building will be 36 feet wide across the front with a small bay on the left side projecting 2 feet. Also, the site plan shows a detached garage at the rear of the lot. The applicant has discussed doing a one-story, two-car garage, which could most likely be approved administratively, but plans for that have not been submitted for review at this time. So we're just looking at the house. Here are the side elevations. I think these are also updated from the ones in your packets. Again, the massing is the same, minor change to the roof pitch, and this also has a window added that shows the rhythm and proportion of windows being appropriate, as are the ones on the front. The materials of this will be, the known materials are cement fiber siding with a 5-inch reveal and an asphalt or fiberglass shingle roof. Staff would ask also to administratively approve color of the roof, texture of materials, as well as any unlabeled materials, including the foundation, porch columns, porch floor, and also the windows and doors. Here's a little context. The top row here are to the left and right of this property, a little bit further up, but on the same side of the street. In either direction, the bottom left there is a historic two-story house in the neighborhood over on 4th Avenue. In the bottom right picture are a pair of houses that are not historic, but are directly across the street from this one. So that's just a little view into the context. I guess I got my slides all out of order here. So again, we're not reviewing the outbuilding, so staff is just recommending approval of the duplex infill construction with the following conditions: that the roof and eaves of the front porch be raised to make the perceived height of the first story taller in relation to the second story, that the porch floor and porch rack be increased in thickness to a size more compatible with the scale of the house, and that staff review and approve the color of the roof and materials of the trim, as well as porch columns, porch floor, and foundation, and also that staff approves the windows and doors and the location of outdoor utilities like air conditioners. And with those conditions all met, staff finds that the project meets the applicable sections of the Salem Town Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay Design Guidelines. I did meet actually with the applicant yesterday, and he's agreed to those conditions. But he's here, and I can answer any questions if you have anything else.
What'd you say the height was, Sean?
31 to that the ridge on the right, and I think it's 30 on the ridge to the left.
Sean, on the porch, I guess, base of the porch, did the applicant indicate if that's a poured concrete floor, or is that wood, or?
I believe this one is poured concrete, and I think 8-inch slab with a little bit of overhang. It doesn't really reflect on the drawings, but I think that's standard.
Yep.
Any other questions from staff? Give your name and address.
I'm Robin York. I'm the representative for Red Grip, the owner of the house, and I've been working with Sean and happily comply with the recommendations or any other recommendations you might have. You just ask about the porch, and I don't really care if it's concrete or wood. Doesn't matter to me. So if you spec it, I'll be glad to do it. So
All right.
I'm good.
Okay. Y'all have any questions?
Sounds good.
My person definitely referred me to you, and frankly, there's supposed to be a sign-off. I don't know how that happened, but.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Any questions? If anyone else that would like to address us? this matter? Any discussion?
I have a quick question to staff. I mean, the vision of Salem Town, I mean, these homes are big, relatively speaking. That's, you guys are comfortable with that? Obviously, I think the one you showed, we approved not too long ago across the street. I think I remember that one. Is that, so that's
Right.
all contextual?
Salem Town's a little different than most of our districts. There's only one historic two-story building. So if this were some other district, we'd say, well, everything has to be one, maybe 1.5. But recognizing that there's already been a lot of changes there, there's a lot of historic fabric missing. 2 stories have been approved. Try to keep that width down, try to keep that height down as much as possible. But these 1.5 to 2 stories have been approved, if that's what you're asking.
In Salem Town is definitely different where we can actually use non-historic context if there isn't any historic context.
Well, I wouldn't go quite that far. We would still look at the historic context.
Right.
Not necessarily in terms of number of stories, but in all other ways, in terms of materials,
I'm just reading from the
design,
height that
form.
it has a different provision than most do, or any others really.
To that end, being part of, consulted and present in meetings as the guidelines were developed, it was a particular point within getting the district established that some guidance be given to what, and deference be given to what has been done, kind of what the community plan is, what's historically appropriate, and that those things were melded together to try, to attempt to give guidance to future development in the neighborhood, which is not always the case necessarily in other districts and the time at which they were established.
And staff would work with the builder to come up with the appropriate eave slope, whatever. Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval of staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approved.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. 612 Monroe. We're not rolling from one to another easily today. Okay, John, are we ready?
Sorry, switching back to the other PowerPoint there, and I think it'll. Not sure I got 2 running, I guess. We're holding down 2 offices now, so we have things like that happen. Okay, 612 Monroe Street. I guess that's just the name of or the address given to this parcel, but it is a large parcel at the corner of 7th Avenue North and Monroe Streets in the Germantown Historic Preservation zoning overlay. And this is an application to construct a new multifamily development. There would be 10 units in total within 7 actual buildings. The development would have frontage on Monroe Street, which is down there on the bottom on this image, with 4 facades facing that street and 3 facades, so it's essentially facing 7th Avenue North, which is on the left. Building 5 there is actually at the corner, so it has facades on both streets. And the building that is units 9 and 10 is at the rear of the lot, essentially along the alley behind. Units 3 and 4 are attached essentially in a single structure, unit 6 and 7, and also units 9 and 10. The others are essentially single-family homes. Again, with this unique lot size. Staff finds that the layout and orientation is appropriate. The one thing that we would ask to be changed here is that in order to properly engage the street, even though they're on the alley, there should be some connection from the building with units 9 and 10 to the street, such as a sidewalk to either street or both. So here's just a rendering showing essentially the 3D model of the development. All of the buildings will be fairly similar in their materials, form, and overall character. They will be 2 1/2 stories tall, with brick as the primary material. They'll all have arched doorways and stylized variations of gabled roofs. And within those gabled roofs, a portion of each building's roof would be left open to create an uncovered roof deck on the 3rd story, which you can see there on the renderings, mainly along the Monroe Street, but you can see them going up on 7th Avenue as well. Here, I don't know if I included this in your packets, but I passed out a street view or streetscape view before the meeting, so you have it in front of you, which is up on the screen here. It shows that the heights of the building vary somewhat because the lot drops going down 7th Avenue North, approximately 9 feet from the corner to the rear of the lot. But generally, the structures are all between 41 and 44 feet tall from grade to the maximum height at the peak, with the parapet heights being between 30 feet and 33 feet. Staff found that these heights are compatible with several historic buildings nearby and meet the design guidelines for height within the historic context of Germantown. Generally, each unit would be 23 feet wide, with the attached units, such as building with units 3 and 4, being otherwise identical to the standalone structures, insofar as material and general rhythm. The massing of Unit 5 differs somewhat because it's at the corner. It also has that 23-foot wide primary component, at least as it faces Monroe Street, and then it extends down to the north along the secondary facade of 7th Avenue. Because it's at this corner, that massing is appropriate. Typically, you see commercial structures, or in this neighborhood, churches that have significant massing that anchor a corner, so this development is appropriate in that way. Likewise, units 9 and 10 have that 23-foot wide primary component, but the configuration is different because of its location at the alley. It doesn't have as much of a street front facade. I think, yeah, you can see it there. It's still relates to the overall style and character of the development, but just with less ornamental entrance, I suppose. This slide here shows the immediate context around the 7th and Monroe intersection. The the structures at the top left there, of course, is a church. At one time, those 2 towers had steeples, and the others across Monroe, and then on each side of 7th are residences, or were residences. I think they're actually parsonages for the church. So with this being the immediate context that this new construction would be across, staff finds that the massing and height of the new buildings would be compatible with this historic context. And this slide also gives a few examples of roof forms in the area, typically hips and gables. This slide gives some more examples of more ornamental roofs. That's a sculpted Dutch or Flemish gable on the left, and a parapeted stepped gable, I might call that, on the one on the right. And those are roof forms that the architect has incorporated into this development. Essentially variations on gables, stepped gables, Dutch gables, some of the side gables and front gables. All sorts of gables. So for the most part, staff found that was an appropriate variant to bring into for the roof forms of this development. And as I said, they would have that open roof deck by essentially having the side planes of a portion of the roof missing. Although you don't see that in the overlay, staff found that this technique or roofing form was not so visually contrasting with historic structures so as to be incompatible. Particularly, I guess on the bottom right picture there, on Monroe Street, you see there are gables where the ridge run front to back, and essentially there you have a screen wall with the open deck area behind the screen. It's somewhat similar to a technique that people do on Broadway with a false wall with the deck behind. It's pretty similar to that. The gables that run side to side, which I guess are units, well, you can still see it in that still picture, same picture. It's the look of that is not all that different from a typical side gabled roof, at least as it's perceived from this angle, and somewhat similar to a parapeted or commercial, two-story commercial building or even residential building that you find elsewhere in Germantown. So staff felt that that was appropriate in this instance too. Unit 5, however, the one at the corner, which is prominently pictured there at the top, the roof, the missing roof section there would be much more visible because of its location at the corner. In the views of the building from 7th Avenue North in particular, think of it as if you're coming in from Rosa Parks down Monroe towards Germantown, you would really see the roof, or actually the absence of roof, behind the screen wall, essentially, just as you're looking down it as you go east down the street. Staff found that condition would be, from this angle, incompatible with roofs of historic buildings. Another item on Unit 5 staff found was found it to be unusual to have incongruity of roof forms on a single structure. You have a lot of diversity throughout the neighborhood, but not so much on single structures. Do you change from a stepped gable to a Dutch gable to a front? A cross gable is certainly a common feature, but the variation or the degree of variation on a single building was greater than you find throughout the district. So that's that. The new buildings, as I said, would be brick with brick row-lock detailing over the windows or at windows and doors, and a couple other detailed brickwork elements throughout the facades, cast stone coping at the cornerstones, or on coping and cornerstones, and a few places with coins would be cast stone also. Those materials are appropriate, but staff, as always in a historic overlay, needs to approve materials for color and texture. The buildings, as you see on the side elevation there on the left, have brick to grade with a soldier course marking the foundation line. Staff finds that differentiation is not sufficient and that a material change is needed to differentiate for the foundation from the actual wall. There are several appropriate materials for that. It could be block or also another use of the cast stone. The windows would be aluminum and doors would be wood. And staff also requested a revision there to meet the guidelines. The guidelines require that front doors be at least 50% glass. Staff finds that the window rhythm on the fronts of all the buildings is appropriate and appropriate in general, but staff recommends that a window be added there. That's Unit 1, but buildings 1, 2, and 8 have similar space of greater than 15 feet at the front of the building without any opening on that second story, so staff recommends that change as well, but no other changes to fenestration on any of the buildings. So, as I said, the roof of number 5 and a couple of windows, staff recommends approval of the application to construct multifamily development at 612 Monroe Street with conditions of a walkway being added to connect the building at the rear of the lot to either street, that the front doors be at least half glass, that the windows are added to the side elevations of the single-family buildings. Those are 1, 2, and 8, units 1, 2, and 8. That the roof of corner building unit number 5 be revised so that it's more cohesive and not open in the corner component. And also standard recommendation or condition that location of HVAC units, other utilities, Fences, walls, exterior lights, and other appurtenances are approved, as are specific selections of brick and stone for color and texture. Meeting those conditions, staff finds that this application meets the design guidelines for new construction in the Germantown Preservation Overlay.
Sean, I see 2 parking spots. Is there on-street, would the on-street parking be allowed? Is that to be anticipated?
On the site plan, I don't know, hopefully it shows pretty well on the screen, but there's each unit has a garage in the basement.
Okay.
Maybe unit 1. I know it's in your, right, I believe it's in your elevations.
Go back to the,
All right, well.
okay, from the courtyard side.
Yes.
Okay. I think I saw it.
I need a
Wait,
shortcut button on my
Next
remote. Yeah, so in the basement.
Yeah, go to the next slide. I think it should show on the next slide. Nope, next, maybe the next one. Yep, one more. I swear I saw it.
You saw it?
Oh, there it is. It's in this one.
No.
Okay. Well, as long as
It's in the drawing.
as long as they come in through the alley into the back. Okay.
Yes.
All right, that was my question. I think you
There are a lot of drawings here.
yeah, it's covered. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so they all have basement level garage
Okay,
accessed from the interior.
okay, all right, okay. Are there any questions of Sean before we open this up to public hearing?
I do have a question. I'd also like to state for the record that I previously had designed a project on this site under different ownership, but I don't think that's going to affect my analysis of this project.
Okay, thank you.
Question for staff would be on the roof form at Unit 5, if I'm without the applicant to verify this, but I think I know what the answer to that might be, is, the desire to have that outdoor space is kind of part and parcel to each one of these units, it appears. If that roof form were open yet maybe more complete, had staff considered that as an option, or if that were part of the future discussion once the applicant comes up as potentially a solution, had that been considered at all, or, and I know I'm putting you on the spot.
We've sort of, it's come up in our staff discussions that, the screen walls, like you have on the image there on the right of Building 5, gives weight to the corner. That's maybe not at least as you view it from there, which is missing from the west elevation. It has that component on the middle and left thirds of the building,
Sure.
but not on
Agreed.
the right. So, I think the architect actually he said he has some ideas that he probably, might.
I wondered if the staff's, my question maybe it should be more pointed, is the staff's opinion that it's either solid or not, kind of not at all. It was that, but something that implied more mass there, but not necessarily closed would, and we'll let the applicant figure that piece out. I wanted to get towards that.
A screen wall,
Or even the illusion, the framing of a roof, but not necessarily the covering of a roof.
Okay.
Might be like an arbor or something along those lines, which can imply mass, but isn't necessarily enclosed or closed in.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, staff? All right. If there's someone that'd like to address the commission on this issue, come forward, give us a name.
Hello, John Root. I'm the architect. We're really excited to show you this concept. We presented this to the Germantown Neighborhood Association meeting a couple weeks back. And I think it was fair to say it was very warmly embraced. They were very happy to see what we presented them. I guess I'll get the easy ones out of the way on staff comments. First of all, the walkways connecting units 9 and 10, which are the alley homes, I guess we could call them. we'll need those spaces between the homes to put mechanical units and electrical meters, and I just don't think it's going to be feasible to allow a walkway to come from Monroe or 7th through those homes. So what I've talked to staff about is perhaps adding a sidewalk on the alley itself connecting to 7th Avenue. And that's kind of what I would propose that we do to connect those homes and kind of have them all interconnected with internal sidewalks on the inner side of the. Also, there's a big grade difference between Monroe Street and in the inside of the site, about 8 to 9 feet. So we'd have that challenge as well if we had to do a sidewalk from the alley to Monroe Street. So I'd like to shoot that out there. Secondly, the front door designs were not meant to be final. I would like to kind of work with staff on the final selections of those doors. We're working with the developer on another project 2 blocks away, and he wanted to do a different door design for every home, and I kind of feel like he wants to do that on this project as well. And so I'd appreciate the opportunity to work with staff to get those final selections approved. The window on the second floor, what we ended up doing is mirroring the floor plan so that the window, the bedroom window is on the opposite corner so that it can be seen from the Monroe side. So essentially the elevation's reversed. That added the window, and I think that meets the staff's intent and their comment. I mentioned the HVAC units, and then finally the Unit 5 roof. We've gone round and round on that one. I don't think I necessarily share the same concern the staff has on this issue, just because as the overall project is seen, I think there's some consistency in the design that speaks to the roof forms continuing. The openness lends to a certain deconstructivist style commonly found in adaptive reuse projects that I think we're trying to kind of take a nod towards. You commonly see this in older historic homes that have been renovated around. I think that's probably appropriate for Germantown to have that kind of flair. Similar appearances will be presented to the street and the sidewalk on the in units, Unit 1 and Unit 8. So I guess I would say that we're repeating that similar look on the corner itself. To your question, Commissioner Mosley, we looked at a number of different things, including taking the gable and wrapping the corner, but it didn't quite fit because of the asymmetric nature of that. Yes, the developer very much wants to keep the roof deck on the roof, and so I suggested maybe eliminating the gable in its entirety and going with just a flat parapet around the corner. And I guess that would be my fallback position if we can't come to an agreement on that. The developer very much wants to keep that roof deck on the roof. But again, I think when you look at the whole development as a whole, I think there starts to be some rhythm and spacing issues that you'll start to see, and I don't necessarily share the same concern that staff may have, because Unit 4 is a gable turned sideways behind it, and in some respect it'll be the backdrop of that kind of open space. If you can kind of see, yeah, there you go. So I don't necessarily feel like the openness is a bad thing. I spoke to staff briefly about the possibility of operable partitions or sunscreens, because I'm sure that's the next question we're going to get from potential buyers is, can we put plastic sheeting up during the winter months? But we talked about that will be a future request through the historic staff on a case-by-case basis. But we were thinking that perhaps there could be a situation where a accordion-style roof might be appropriate. But in this situation, I would defer to your questions and comments.
You all have questions? Mr. Root?
And I guess to the end of, this has to do with, I'm sure, first cost and completing the roof forms. I was thinking, with the deconstructivist style, the implication even of rafters, while it not be made necessarily wood or steel, we're not here to design it, but that it might still remain open, just maybe a little less open, and start to complete that form was a thought that came to mind even before hearing the presentation. And I feel like there's perhaps a middle ground there, perhaps. But it sounds like you'd like it to as designed, be maintained with that aesthetic.
I mentioned the plastic sheeting because I think that's where this is going. If we start to put more members up there, that somebody, whoever buys that's going to go, oh, they're here, and let's take advantage of it.
I got 3 walls and half a roof. Why not?
Yeah, we're going to have another Broadway down there. So
Sure.
Agreed. There's a certain point which I don't think we should cross, and I think that might be crossing it to encourage that kind of stuff. So
Good point.
I defer to kind of you guys on how much is too much.
Any other questions? Is there anyone else that would like to come before us and comment? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This is open for discussion. No questions?
Well, it sounds like that the applicant, who's the architect, will work with the staff, so on that corner area, so.
Yeah,
No, they want it
I
open.
don't, yeah, they want to do it as is, and I think I'd rather us not shirk our responsibility to assist the staff in giving them some direction
Yeah.
if we decide what's presented is not in keeping with the guidelines. Not to say that we need to design it here right now, but that giving the staff some
Right.
definitive direction and the applicant so that they can move forward with it, I think is our charge.
Well said.
That's not a for or against. I'm just I'm encouraging us to do it one way or the other.
I'll make a motion if we're ready.
Okay.
I move approval based on the applicant working with staff on a solution to the walkways as presented by applicant. Working with staff on the front doors. Working with staff on the additional windows on units 1, 2, and 8. And working with staff on the location of the HVAC units and other utilities. And that basically implies that this proposal is accepting the design of the open roof on corner number 5. On this,
Will you repeat the last part of that?
I am waiving the requirement.
Oh, okay.
for the enclosure of roof on number 5. It's proposed as designed.
Okay. All right. Okay, we have a motion.
I second.
And we have a second. All right. Discussion?
I have a question for staff. Something was brought up in the application. I wanted to. It wasn't mentioned in the. I wasn't paying enough attention. On number 5, there was some different styles, I guess. There was a comment about different styles that were matched. Was that at all a requirement for approval or disapproval? I just wanted to make sure we get done what needs to get done.
Yes, the recommendation also was, I guess, to increase cohesiveness of the west elevation of number 5. Here you see the stepped gable and the Dutch gable on one elevation.
And that was, I wanted to make a particular point to see if there any further clarity on that needed to be made, not one way or the other.
I think Ben's point is that he would like to see us give staff some direction, more direction.
Oh, I think it's pretty clear what the motion that's been made in terms of that direction. I wanted to make the point, are we talking about, it seemed that there were 2 different issues potentially there particularly on unit number 5 on the west elevation, and that we weren't breezing by that as we get into the meat of this motion.
We have a motion and a second to adopt staff recommendation waiving the condition that the roof of the corner building unit be revised to more cohesive and not open at the corner. That is the motion of waiving that condition, correct?
Correct.
It is.
Okay.
And I think Ben has brought up, that motion may have breezed by of this cohesive part, and quite frankly, I really don't understand it. So are there two different issues? Is it cohesive and open, or is it just they want it not open to make it more cohesive?
Do you want to take it? There's two different issues. One is that that piece in the front is open, and we thought that having a more solid form would give weight to that corner and make the whole project make a little more sense. And then if you look at it from the side, you've got essentially three different roof forms on one building. So we thought making those more cohesive would make a little more sense so that it doesn't look like three buildings attached to each other. And wall dormers are something we don't typically allow, which the left side kind of is heading that way.
If I might.
I think the recommendation probably needs to be amended then to add on the cohesiveness.
Yeah, I second your amendment.
So.
Okay. Okay, repeat the
motion.
last part. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Right.
And the motion on the floor is that we adopt staff recommendation, but to waive the issue on Unit 5. That's the motion that we have. You are going to amend that motion.
Yes, I'd like to amend my motion to include staff recommendation that unit number 5 be designed to be more cohesive.
Okay, which is staff recommendation.
But is the half of the staff recommendation on that note.
Second.
Okay, all right. So we have you're withdrawing your second. We have
We got an amendment and a second.
Okay, all right. Are we going to, do we have to vote on the amendment?
No,
We can vote it as a whole?
As long as
Okay.
he's the one who made the motion, so he amended it.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure what that meant, but
Very good, very good.
417 Park Circle.
That one has been pulled at the applicant's request
Pull?
for this month by the applicant.
Oh, okay. So now we are going to 919 McFerrin. And we had Councilman Davis supporting this application.
919 McFerrin is an application to construct infill on a vacant lot. In December 2013, the commission denied an application for infill at the site, but approved an outbuilding. This application is a new design for the infill by the same applicant. Staff is again recommending disapproval of the project. Here is the site plan. The infill meets all base zoning setbacks. Here is the front facade. Staff finds that the house's height and scale are appropriate to the historic context. However, staff is recommending disapproval of the project because of several key aspects of the design that do not meet the design guidelines. First and foremost, the house's flat roof form does not meet the design guidelines. The design guidelines state that roof pitches should be similar to the pitches found in the district. Historic roofs are generally between 612 and 1212. There are no flat roof residential structures in the Greenwood Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay, and therefore the infill's flat roof form does not meet the design guidelines. In addition, the primary material for the infill is proposed to be stucco. Staff did not identify any historic structure in the Greenwood Conservation Overlay with stucco as its primary material. The vast majority of the historic structures in the neighborhood have brick or lap siding as their primary material. There is also not a change in material from the foundation to the first floor level. Historic houses in the Greenwood area all have changes in material at the foundation level. The 5-foot tall porch wall is also atypical for the Greenwood area. This type of tall wall creates a somewhat enclosed porch design that is more typical of architectural styles that are not found in this neighborhood. More characteristic in the district are porches with open railings or no railings and narrow posts, creating a more open feel. The infill's primary windows are generally twice as tall as they are wide, thereby meeting the historic proportions of window openings. One exception is a 3-foot by 3-foot square window opening on the front facade to the left of the door. A window like this on the front facade should be at least twice as tall as it is wide. The front facade also has a window opening that is filled with shutters and wraps around the corner to the north-left facade. It is not clear if the shutters will be fixed or if they'll be operable. Staff would need more information on the shutters before determining their appropriateness. Here are the 2 side elevations. Here is the rear facade. Here are some perspective drawings of the proposed infill. And here is a drawing that the applicant submitted comparing the proposed design for 919 McFerrin to other houses. Just wanted to point out that the 2 houses on the right are actually outside of the Greenwood Conservation Zoning overlay. And here are some context photos. The photos on the top are the 2 houses on either side of 919 McFerrin. They are non-contributing structures. And then the photo on the bottom is a photo of the houses across the street. You can see there's one historic house across the street. And here are additional photos along McFerrin Avenue. So in conclusion, staff recommends disapproval of the infill, finding that its tall porch wall height, lack of a defined foundation, flat roof form, stucco cladding, and proportion of rhythm of openings do not meet the design guidelines. Staff finds that the basic massing, scale, and layout of the house is appropriate, and a simple alteration of roof form, materials, and windows are all that are needed to meet the design guidelines. Although these alterations are simple to accomplish, they do radically change the look of the building, which is why staff is recommending disapproval of the project. And just wanted to let you know that you should have before you a letter from the Neighborhood Association that was passed out prior to the meeting. They are recommending approval of the infill. Happy to answer any question. The owner and the architect are here to address the commission as well.
Thank you. All right. Does the commission have any questions for the staff at this point?
Well, the one project we just looked at in Germantown in a historic overlay, there was I thought, attractive but dramatically different roof form that you couldn't find in Germantown. And one of the reasons you recommend disapproval here is the roof form can't be found in this overlay. What's sort of the difference there? Why wouldn't you use a similar rationale here for?
We actually did.
Unless, I think it's attractive, but.
We actually did see similar roof forms in Germantown. There were some, I think, in the presentation with those Flemish or whatever you want to call it, type roof forms.
I'm talking about the completely open roof deck.
The form itself is there, even though the material may not be there. So, if you have a gable, that front gable, it looks like a gable. But the flat roof, there wasn't anything. Okay. And although, you saw this last month, and certainly the designs are greatly improved. And I think we all agreed it was a really good-looking house. It just doesn't meet the guidelines here because that roof form and that material of stucco to gray just doesn't exist in the neighborhood. And our concern is following those design guidelines, which is how people know what to expect from you. Otherwise, it might be an arbitrary and capricious decision.
The other comment is that because we're getting a letter from the Greenwood Neighborhood Association and the councilman has come before and said they've approved as well, so that seems quite a statement for this project. And I do recall this conversation from last month that if the neighborhood was approving this type of change to their guidelines, that they would make an amendment to their guidelines so that it would allow for this type of architecture, which is clearly different from neighboring buildings, yet on different avenues, there were similar houses as well. So that is a bit of a balance there. So it makes it difficult for me anyway to have a black and white answer on that.
But you bring up a great point. That is an option. It's not the guidelines you have before you today, but they certainly could choose to change the guidelines at some point. And that has a process it has to go through and notice to all the property owners.
And again, this is a statement. This is from their neighborhood association. So if they're approving this and are very impressed with it, it's very hard to be balanced to have a decision of black and white here today.
Monet, to that end, I think our charge is to enforce the guidelines that we're presented with. So this is not to say that this project couldn't be approved as presented today, but if we're going to do that, I think a compelling, from our decision, some compelling argument other than to say it's artfully done and it's nice that'd be our responsibility if we chose to do that. I don't want to say in spite of, but because of, or for whatever, because of the support that it garners, we certainly need to be able to tie that back to the guidelines or tie it to the particular situations of this project, separate and apart from the groundswell of support that appears to be behind the project.
I agree with that statement. I agree with what Monet said, and I do like the project. And I think last month I may have been the one who suggested that someone move and amend the guidelines to allow this because to clearly allow it. I don't think that the guidelines necessarily clearly prohibit it. I think it's a tough one, and I think the reason this is different and not just any attractive design that has that's more unusual than the average one. I think what makes this different is these Spanish colonial stuccos. You can find them all over East Nashville in every neighborhood that I can think of, with a couple of exceptions. And I don't think there is one in there is not one in the Greenwood Neighborhood Conservation Overlay, but I wouldn't get too hung up on the one that's close by being in the Maxwell, because I looked at an aerial earlier today. It's 4.5 blocks. It's not, sure, there's a line, they're different design overlays, but if you're walking in these neighborhoods, there isn't a line that says you are now entering Maxwell Heights conservation overlay. And the guidelines between the two, I think, are very similar, if not identical. So to me, there is an example close by. I suspect that there were others that have been demoed during urban renewal and other times, and you still do find them spotty all over. And it is, driving through Inglewood on Saturday, it's incredibly random. I found 6 on back streets. They're just kind of everywhere. And so I don't think it's out of place, and I don't think it's setting a precedent that's incredibly dangerous that someone comes up with any creative, attractive design that, if it's unusual, it's automatically contrasting greatly. I don't think that's what this is. I'm inclined to focus more on the scale and the massing of it that is very much compatible, more so than a lot of other ones that we do approve, and focus less on the flat roof form. And then, to me, if you accept the premise that a Spanish colonial can be found kind of here and there anywhere in these neighborhoods, then I think it in turn takes care of each one of staff's concern. That takes care of the flat roof. That takes care of the no change in materials from the foundation. It takes care of the 5-foot porch wall. That's not an unusual thing in a Spanish colonial. And but the one exception that I think I would probably still say, the front windows and shutters, some of that maybe still needs to be worked on with staff. But I guess where I'm going with it is, if you can take the premise that these do appear quite randomly, it's not an unusual condition, then I think you can get through the rest of it pretty quickly and easily. And I think there's little concern that it's setting a bad precedent for other projects that are unique.
Make one more comment on that as well. Oh, I just forgot it. Oh, well, I'll think about it. All right.
The applicant probably needs to make their case before we get too deep into this thing.
Didn't you show us a picture of a
already done
similar
interior.
home right down the street?
I believe the applicant has, I don't think I have that in my presentation. I think the applicant has that in their presentation. So if you want to hear from them, you'll be able to see it.
Wasn't there like Spanish home 2 doors down?
Yeah,
on the
well,
right?
let's hear from the architect and the owner, and then you have the floor. You'll give us your name and address.
I'm not sure if I want to say anything now. But I'm William Gant. This is my wife, Tony Gant. We live at 1115 Boscobel, and we're hoping to move into 919 McFerrin. Before we get started, I have a significant hearing loss, and so if we get to the question and answer period, if I could ask you to speak up, and hopefully I can hear what you're saying. But we had 4 points that were brought up last time, and hopefully we can address that today, that the original drawings were not that easy to read, that the stucco was thought to not to be an appropriate material, that there were not that many Spanish-style homes outside of Little Hollywood, and that the Greenwood neighborhood hadn't really had a chance to look over our design, so we hope we can address that today. And we talked about here that unfortunately there are a lot of buildings that were in the Greenwood area and local area that are missing, that have been torn down. This was here on Woodland Street. Here in 1893, which must have been the precursor of the Spanish-style homes, it was actually a Metro Fire Department there at 3rd and Foster that's no longer with us. And we have a place over here in Scott that was recently demolished to make room for a house. And other homes not demolished appear to have been altered in the community, sort of like we have over here in Belmont, where we had the sister houses, and one still retains the parapet and the flat roof, and the other one they've altered. And we have a lot of those examples in our neighborhood. This one possibly was a Spanish style with a flat roof. This one as well. We have another one here. This one, you can even see where the drains were, that was definitely a flat roof at one time. Then there's the stucco condition. There were stucco homes all throughout East Nashville and within the Greenwood community. Some more examples. These are all here local, within a few miles of where we're suggesting to build. Again, even over there in Cleveland Park, Woodland Street, and actually even behind our house, the new addition, the stucco on the chimney, the outbuilding is stucco. And I believe last time we were here, we had our outbuilding approved, and that exterior was going to be a stucco, and I believe we're supposed to have that matching. So we're hoping that we can do so. And there's also places four doors down from where we're suggesting the building that's a stucco, that white building right there. The parapet roofs are plenty in various styles, which make East Nashville unique, as you know. I go through there's actually 64 of slides. I'm kind of going fast here. There's commercial and there's residential buildings. This, I guess, used to be commercial, is now residential. We have little outbuildings or side buildings that show that. This is off of Church. And then the Spanish style is placed all over East Nashville. I found some just 2 weeks ago that I didn't even know existed. On, was it Joy Circle, I believe? Mm-hmm. And off of Trinity, but we have some examples there. The style is just all over the world. Flat roof, parapet roof. And again, these are not in Little Hollywood. And as we get to Little Hollywood, that's an amazing house there. Even the mailbox fits that style. And now, that's one of the things we were actually concerned about, because if we were not allowed to build our house and we sold that land to a developer, they could go by the letter of the law and get every style point that's in the guidelines and build a house that is totally out of scale, side by side. And we really hope that doesn't happen, as we're seeing here at Little Hollywood. And again, this is Little Hollywood, and some of the newer styles there in Little Hollywood, they have the mixture of the gables, side gables, and flat roof. And that's part of East Nashville's attraction, is the surprising placement of Spanish-style homes. There's not just one location, they're spread throughout. And the place here at 944 Maxwell. And it's kind of a funny thing, but as we're looking at our lot, even the Ellington Parkway, which may have came through and knocked down some of those homes. It kind of reflects that Spanish-style arch. And there was actually one more. I'm sorry, I did. Yeah. And then we also understand the concerns about the flat roof. And we're hoping that we can suggest some ideas that we can have a flat style roof, but as long as it fits historical, not something in the modern style, which we see creeping in. There's even some that are built on Shelby in the conservation area that are not flat roof, but they're low hung roofs, which give off that appearance from the street as being flat. There's several of those that have been built, and something like this we wouldn't want to have. And also, I think you have the letter. The Greenwood Neighborhood Association is 100% behind us now. We've talked with them about what we plan to do, and they're 100% behind us. And you know, Councilman Scott Davis was here as well. And we hope we've answered your questions that you had last time, and we're standing ready to answer it more if you need it. And Matt.
And I just have a few things to add to William's presentation, and I'll say at the beginning here how wonderful it's been to work with William and Tony. I know if some of you working in the field, you know it's the rare day, and you know, one where you jump up and down when somebody comes to you and says, "I'd like to see if I can build a green roof." It just doesn't happen that often because it's a little more expensive, and you want to make it work. And while we were doing the research, we found some other reasons why a flat roof is appropriate in this instance, and we believe it actually meets the guidelines. So the guidelines don't have to be amended, but simply interpreted as they were meant to be interpreted to account for this unique context. And I'll first, like Mr. Root, I'll address some of the things that I think are easy to address, which is the porch railing, slightly different windows, shutters. We remain willing to work with staff there. Obviously, what we were doing is we were going off of an existing example within the neighborhood, and so that's where some of those detail elements come from. The wood shutters were an effort to try and break up that facade and stay true to the form that we saw across the street. So what we essentially did was, like happens all over historic neighborhoods, we took an existing form and we switched the style. So if you can see on the bottom one of these boards, you'll see a panoramic view of Little Hollywood, and you go down the road and there's actually a sloped roof house right next to a Spanish Revival style home, and we believe that was built by the same builders who built all those parapet roof houses in Little Hollywood. And basically they said, we're going to match some of the scale of the parapet roof homes, but we're going to take a slightly different style. And we really think that that's the direction that the national standards and the guidelines that were based on national standards lead. You may look at us and ask yourself, well, if staff is asking for a sloped roof, why won't you just coalesce and go for a sloped roof? And one reason is that William, teaches science and wants to take on the challenge of our generation, which is environmental responsibility, and that's a huge deal for me. And I think even though it's not mentioned in the guidelines, it's one of those things that is congruous with preservation. And the other reason, and this applies really more to the historic district, is that 919 McFerrin Avenue is located just south and east of historic Lookaway. And Lookaway was built in the 19th century, and it's referenced in Bill McKee's book, North Edgefield Remembered. And it seems to insinuate that, I'll read a quick section. As a wedding present, the new Mrs. Whitson was presented Lookaway. The house had a commanding view of the city, and the name of the home was taken from a line in the song Dixie, and contained a library of over 1,600 volumes. So if you'll take a look, and I forget which board it's on. If you'll take a look on the whiteboard here, we've created a site section. We actually modeled the site, and that starts to show the elevation of Lookaway as compared to the house we're proposing at 919 McFerrin. So if we were to take the staff recommendation and build even a modestly scaled 1 or 1.5 story home with a slope in the roof, that slope can get up to close to 30 feet. And so all of a sudden you're really intruding into the historic view shed of Lookaway. So the flat roof worked in that respect. And I'll just read a quick excerpt from the National Secretary of Interior Standards, which the Greenwood guidelines are based on. It says, new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing size, scale, and architectural features to protect historic integrity of the property and its environment. So we looked at that and we said, we really want to protect and preserve the historic integrity of this environment, which is very much that 19th century home Lookaway behind it. And so as you're looking from the porch of Lookaway, you're still looking out onto the city and East Nashville with an unobstructed view. And we felt that was something important. That was something that warranted a flat roof in this instance, even if most of the roofs are sloped. There it goes again. And beyond that point, we see elements, we see sloped roofs, we see flat roofs, we see arched openings, we see flat openings. We feel that flat roof elements can be compatible with sloped roof elements, but how do we ensure that? And so what we did is we went through and we did a 3-dimensional geometric analysis in perspective, and I believe it's on this board at the top left corner. And we said, taking a look from the street, we know that scale is perceived as the amount of your visual field that is occupied by a particular object. So we said, let's take a historic form that's everywhere, and let's make sure that our structure is compatible in that scale. And so we measured the building outline in perspective of a typical historic Victorian, and then we compared it to ours, and we were equivalent. And that's something that was important to us, to stay equivalent in that respect. And we feel that is, again, is where the guidelines are leading. They're asking for that type of equivalency of scale, if not exact sameness in every instance. And then to speak a little bit to staff's contention that Greenwood or the neighborhood has no Spanish Revival style homes. We did a study going through and pulling the Sanborn fire insurance maps and pasting them together for the vicinity. And what we found was, I'll just say this outline is Ellington Parkway, which demolished many of these homes and then had the effect of, causing the demolition of homes around it, even though it didn't directly demolish some of these homes. What we found is that Eastland Avenue, in some ways, dead-ended formerly into McFerrin, and then there was an alley that went past that to the railroad tracks. So the idea of Eastland Avenue and Cleveland Street as this major thoroughfare and divider between these two districts is somewhat artificial based upon urban renewal and trying to get people from Gallatin Road to Ellington Parkway. So these neighborhoods developed architecturally as a single neighborhood. They are geographically a single neighborhood contained between Gallatin Road and the railroad tracks. And so we believe that they are one district except in name only. In fact, the guidelines are the districts, Greenwood and Maxwell Height, I believe were approved at the same council meeting. They have nearly identical guidelines. And so I think the only reason they are two separate districts is because they had separate neighborhood associations at that time, and Pam Murray, who was the council person, wanted them to be two separate districts. Not that they were separate districts, again, geographically or architecturally. And if you can take a look, I think the map is on this board, you can see a map of East Nashville, and we've mapped out some of those red dots where some of the other Spanish Revival style homes are, and you can see how close we are to an existing example of Spanish Revival style. And you can also see that Maxwell Height and Greenwood combined are still much smaller than Lockland Springs. So the fact that these are two neighborhoods, I think, like Aaron has said, is really a name only. I also want to speak to staff's concerns, and I understand it because I've been in their position. You know, you look at a flat roof or a parapet roof, and you say, what can this lead to? And so we went into the neighborhood and we said, well, here are some examples, you know, of houses that are using a similar type of roof that really are out of scale, you know, and what's to prevent the commission from going down this road? And I think you can use the unique character of a lot. You can use its location next to a 19th century home with very historic view sheds to say, this particular lot has character that will keep us from traveling down a path that we, traveling down a path that we wouldn't like to. This is a non-binding decision that you're making. If this is approved on this lot, it doesn't mean you have to approve it at a different lot. And this too is an example of a Spanish Revival style commercial building that was kind of reclad, redone in Spanish Revival style. But again, this is not something that you will be forced to approve for deciding on this case. I think that's most of what I have. And I so appreciate your time. You know, you're out here volunteering. I know you're busy like we are, and I realize this is a nuanced and intellectually challenging case. But I also feel life is most rewarding at these moments, and fate has put us here to make this challenging decision. And I entreat you to approve the parapet at 919 McFerrin Avenue based upon the unique location, character, and context of the property. And I'm looking forward to ensuring that we preserve the historic viewshed of Lookaway and pursue a future that's as vibrant and varied as our past. Thanks again for your time. We are available for questions.
Matt, I've got a quick one. If you could, I couldn't see the Sanborn map as you were if you could orient me in that Sanborn map just quickly to your argument when it was behind one of the other exhibits.
And I'm sorry it's such a small scale, but it's kind of the nature of pacing these together. Here is our property, and let's see, there it is, Chickamauga, and here is Eastland Avenue. And you can see Eastland Avenue comes down historically and hits McFerrin, and then jogs or does a little chicane and becomes West Eastland. Not a road that probably people were using as a primary thoroughfare. And you know from your experience with historic properties, they would divide up old parcels of land, and you'd see a street kind of move one direction or another. And historically, there just wasn't the same concern in some of these neighborhoods about plowing through a street that can continue straight without turns for a long time. So really, this is an alleyway.
Where's Maxwell? Where is the address at Maxwell? Just relative to where your site is and where it's there.
Yeah, this is. Let's see. It's going to be right here, I believe.
Okay.
I'm sorry. This is Maxwell, so it's actually it's that property right there.
Yeah, it's actually it could show the one that had the blue.
And it's 4 short blocks. So I think Melissa looked at it.
Would you point out the Maxwell?
So,
this is McFerrin, and here's Maxwell right here.
Okay.
This is Little Hollywood down here, and you can see that distance is equivalent to, a house on Stratton and the end of Woodland.
Okay. And you've answered the question. I just wanted to make sure my orientation of the two districts was clear. Thanks.
Staff recommendation says half a mile because they're short blocks. The blocks have a long direction and a short direction. We because these blocks are the short direction. It's actually closer to a quarter mile than a half a
Okay,
mile.
do we have any more questions for the architect and owner at this point?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, all right, we will close the public hearing and open for discussion. Comments?
Sorry. I think I'm correct in making this statement. The design guidelines are really, they're subject to our interpretation. We sit on this panel as judges. That's what we each are, a judge here. And we have discretion. And our discretion is to interpret these guidelines. They're not mandatory. They're guidelines. And where appropriate, they can be expanded upon. And we would be well within our discretion to do so. And so I'm trying to address a point that you raised, Ben, about the guidelines. They're just not mandatory, they're guidelines. And I think in this case, we would be well within our discretion and not anywhere close to capricious in approving this application. And I just want to make that statement. That's what we serve here as judges. And we have discretion, and where appropriate, when you give all the circumstances of this situation, I have been through this neighborhood like you, Aaron. I have seen these little Spanish things, they're all over the place. They're not far away. No, they're not in this particular neighborhood, but they're close by. And I think it's consistent with the guidelines that this application can be approved.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
After hearing, I wasn't here to hear the councilperson, apologies, I wasn't here to hear the councilperson speak, but in light of, I feel like I've carefully considered, listened to the applicant, listened to the staff's presentation, and considering the support presented by the applicant and the neighborhood and the council member, I also find compelling I'd like to make a motion for approval of the application as submitted and add to that application the condition that the applicants work with staff to resolve some of the window and front elevation, particularly window front elevation issues that were mentioned with the shutters. And I think the applicant stated early on that they didn't have, those were easy, to use the applicant's word or the applicant's representative's words to resolve, but particularly with regard to the windows and some of the other things, not nearly as concerned. So my motion ends there, and I'll then go on to tie this back to the guidelines. I'm not nearly as concerned with the front porch railing, mainly because of the style of the house. And I find compelling the applicant's argument that the guideline or the boundaries for the district are somewhat arbitrary to our modern construct of councilmatic districts and neighborhood associations, and that these districts were built relative to the same time, and finding a specific example near enough to this project that exhibits very similar qualities to this, and added to the fact that the applicant's designer has added something of a sloped roof form with shingles that is more in keeping. I think certainly not detracting from the Spanish style, but in deference to the surrounding context, that does in fact meet the guidelines. I'd further state that in this condition, given that the two adjacent homes are non-contributing homes, and that the location of this home and its siting is unique in that it's directly adjacent to major thoroughfare and kind of destruction of the neighborhood fabric. It's at an edge because of Ellington Parkway, that this is an appropriate form and stylistic choice by the applicant. Sorry for the long.
You want to repeat the motion?
Well, the motion ended a long time ago. I just was
All right,
was
we have a
tying it back
motion.
to the guidelines.
But his motion is, the staff recommends disapproval, Ben.
And I didn't move to accept the staff's recommendation.
Okay.
I did note, however, that the applicant worked with the staff to resolve some front elevation issues, specifically with the windows and the wood shutters and window placing and size.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion?
I want to make sure I'm voting for the right thing. So they're agreeing with the staff to disapprove this.
No, it was a motion
No.
for approve as submitted with the condition.
Yeah, right.
With conditions
Okay.
to the window and shutters.
Yeah, does everyone understand that motion?
Yep.
Okay, and that second went along with that? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, application is approved. Okay, 1406, Holly.
Sorry, just orienting everything. 1406 Holly Street is an application to amend a previously approved design for infill. In April 2013, the commission approved the demolition of a non-contributing structure at 1406 Holly and approved the design of a single-family infill. The applicant would like to amend the previously approved plans for the infill in order to construct a duplex on the site. And I just want to add that the commission does not review whether or not it's a single family or a duplex. It's just the design of it. But we're bringing it back because the design has changed enough that we thought the commission should see it again. The larger site plan on your screen is the new proposed site plan. The smaller one underneath it is what was previously approved. Staff finds that the revised setbacks meet the design guidelines, but we have concerns about the width of the new design. The revised width is primarily 36 feet wide. By comparison, the widths of neighboring historic houses vary between 25 and 33 feet wide. Just here's a quick metro map showing the site in question is highlighted in yellow. The building that it's showing on there has since been demolished, but it's showing the widths of the surrounding historic houses. Staff finds that the width of the revised infill does not meet the historic context, and staff asks that the house be reduced in width so that it is no more than 34 feet wide at the front for at least a depth of 20 feet. The depth of the new design is 12 feet deeper than what was previously approved. Staff finds that this increase in the building's depth will not significantly impact the historic character of Holly Street. And the previously approved site plan indicated that the applicant would keep the existing non-historic outbuilding. The applicant is now proposing to demolish the outbuilding, which staff finds to be appropriate because the outbuilding does not contribute to the historic character. This is a diagram that the architect submitted, just showing the difference between what was previously approved and what they are now proposing. So I believe, and the architect can explain this better when he's up here, that the gray part is remaining the same, the dark gray. The light gray was what was previously approved, the form that was previously approved, and the white is what they're now requesting. But I'm sure the architect can better explain that when he comes up to speak to you. Here is the revised front facade with the previously approved facade pasted. That's the right side. Here's a revised front facade in the corner. That's what was previously approved. The new design is 1.5 stories with a ridge height that will be 6 inches taller than what was previously approved for a total height of 28 feet 6 inches. You'll notice that there's a 6 foot wide peak that adds another 2 feet 8 inches, and staff did not feel that significantly altered the impact, the impact on the scale of the house. We find that the slight increase of the structure will match the historic context along Holly Street. The context along Holly Street varies greatly between 17 feet and 34 feet tall. So again, the maximum this would be about 31 feet, so that's well underneath what other houses are on Holly Street. Since the infill will now be a duplex, an additional entrance has been added to the front facade. The porch wraps around to cover both entrances. No significant changes to the infill's materials were indicated on the drawings, and all the materials have been approved by the commission in the past, and staff finds that they meet the design guidelines. Here are the side facades. The fenestration of the pattern of the infill has not significantly changed, although we did note that the floor plan showed a window opening where the red outline is, but the side elevation does not, so we'll just want that the drawings indicate the window patterns before they're approved. And here is the rear facade. And here are some context photos along Holly Street. And here are additional context photos. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the infill's redesign and the demolition of the outbuilding with the following conditions. 1, the width of the structure be reduced at the front to be a maximum of 34 feet wide for a depth of at least 20 feet. And 2, the applicant submit revised drawings reconciling the window pattern on the floor plans and the elevations. I believe the applicant is here and would like to address the commission.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Okay. At this time, if you'd like to come and address us again.
Thank you very much. John Root, I'm the architect. I guess I should explain how we got here. After the approval from the meeting a couple months back, some investigation was done, and Metro Water didn't understand where their sewer line was. It goes right under the existing house, and to mediate that issue, we had to relocate a substantial sewer line on the property. Obviously, that's at the developer's cost. So the developer didn't want to do a duplex, but to salvage the cost of removing, I think it's a 36-inch main or something like that, we are having to go back to the drawing board and try to make a two-family structure on this property. In the air of keeping the original design intent with the cottage feel that we originally presented to you, I went back to the drawing board and tried to figure out how we could salvage that design, incorporate a two-family structure into it, and minimally impact the original design as it stood. I think the diagram that I showed, can I go back on this? I drew this diagram here to try to explain that the dark gray area we're completely leaving alone from the first initial design. What I'm asking for is an extra 18 inches on either side. And basically what that did for us is allow us to increase the living areas on either side by 18 inches. And because it's a 1.5 stories proposal, the bedroom upstairs is under the roofs. And because of that, we needed that 18 inches to kind of make the bedrooms livable. What staff has recommended is we push that 36-foot piece back 20 feet from the front porch. I've got it right now at 12'6". I think it's, I got it right here. Yeah, 6'8" plus 6-foot porch, so it's 12'8". Pushing that mass 20 feet off the front porch essentially kills that bedroom in the front under that roof that I'm trying to maintain. We could work with maybe 15. That would push it another 2.5 feet, but I can't make this concept work at 20 feet as staff has requested. So I asked to come to the board to kind of plead my case with you guys to try to retain the original design intent. Otherwise, we would have to kind of scrap it and go another direction. So with that, I would love to answer any of your questions.
Okay. Any questions for John?
John, I don't remember if the first, I'll forget about that lead-in. Can you talk a little bit about how there's a exterior front sort of walkout, exterior porch? How does that drain out? Is it assumed that water won't get in there, or will that have a scupper on the front?
It's got a, excuse me. It's got a scupper. Yeah, it's basically a cased opening that we go back to that we just divided down the middle, kind of a center mullion,
right?
In essence, and that drains underneath the roof itself.
Okay.
We don't expect to be a lot of water, but it would be a dripping water onto the porch.
Okay.
It's concealed behind the roof porch.
Well done. I just wanted to. We've had a situation where suddenly there's this big, and it wasn't even centered in the middle of the two porches.
For my liability. Yeah, thank you.
I didn't expect as much. I just wanted to ask. Okay.
Right.
Anyone else? Any questions? Okay, thank you so much. Is there anyone else that'd like to address the commission on this project? If not, I will close the public hearing and open up for discussion or a motion.
So we have approved these second floor kind of enclosed porches before, is that right? It's something I'm not familiar with.
That's correct. The first one I can think of is on Grantland, and I believe there's been some others, but where was that?
Grantland and Prentice.
Prentice, but wasn't there another one? There was another one.
There's
wasn't
one on
there?
Shelby, but that's.
Yes, there's one on Shelby.
Okay.
Do I hear any questions? Do I hear a motion?
Can I say one more comment? I apologize. Because of the sewer easement issue in the front yard, we were forced to push the structure further back, and that pushes, in essence, pushes the building back another 5 feet from where we needed to put it. So we're further back off the street as well.
And what you're asking today, you've submitted, what you've asked today and show is the 12 feet?
12'8" from the front edge of the porch. And
you said you could make 15 work.
I could make 15 work, yeah,
Okay.
but
All right.
we wanted to kind of hear how you guys felt
Okay.
about it.
All right. Okay, so I think that is one of the discussion items.
And so one other question, on the site plan, the 9-foot crosshatch, that's just the easement, not a driveway, right?
Any other discussion?
I did want to. So I think, John, to your point, the house would have been 5 feet further up, or it has the little notch
Actually,
out
it
of
would
it.
have been, do you have the original? I dimensioned the site plan 55 feet to the front wall. So the porch is 6 foot deep.
And so you were kind of splitting the difference between 42 of the house to the right side of the page and then the existing residence to the left. And so you're
We're about
accounting
another
for
5 feet behind it.
Right. You're accounting for some of, you're dealing with that in addition to some other things. I just wanted to clarify that.
And this is a new sewer easement that we're working with Metro Water to try to get this swung around the house.
Thank you.
What was your feeling on the 34-foot? Sorry? What was your feeling on the? What was your feeling on the 34-foot requirement versus the 36 that you've got drawn?
I need the 36-foot width. I think the question is where that starts in relationship to the front of the lot or the front of the building, I guess is what staff's concern is. Staff is recommending 20 feet, and I've got it at 12'8" right now. And I could make 15 work.
They got 34 and 20. They want the 36 to go to 34. And they want that pushed back 20 to 20 feet. Is that right? Am I reading that right?
Is that the recommendation? It says. It's saying they want it under 34 feet in the first 20 feet is what I'm reading that as. So I can go to 36 feet just behind that 20-foot mark.
And the issue that you're having is it's the upstairs that your depth before you come out from 34 feet would be, you could do it at 15, but 20 becomes more difficult.
In essence, I'm trying to get a third bedroom up there underneath the roofs because it's a 1.5-story design. And I'm trying to conceal the massing of the house. I'm trying to conceal behind that roof. So to make this design work, you need to try to get a usable room in that area to make it work. And I'm trying to retain the front porch on the second floor as well as a part of that design. So a corridor and access to it as well.
Do I hear a motion? Any further thoughts?
I think the scale is, the original proposal that we approved a few months ago was already pushing it for the immediate context. This isn't much bigger, but it is bigger, so I think it's the width, reducing the width is important, and starting that as far back as possible. I think staff has done a good job with that, and if 20 is too much, I feel like 15 might be a good compromise.
Form of a motion.
Yeah, and I mean, to that end, in this case particularly, that the discrepancy, it appears from the applicant's, presentation that the discrepancy in the location of the sewer main certainly had some mitigating impact and might influence, certainly influence the way I'm looking at that.
Yeah, and in some ways, because the sewer easement is driving the setback further than it otherwise would be, that also, I think, helps with having 15 rather than 20. So I'd make a motion to approve based on staff recommendation, with the exception that the 34-foot maximum width be just for a depth of at least 15 feet.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all right. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 1112 Lillian.
Take 1112 and 1114 Lillian Street and present them together.
Okay.
For those of you who remember from last month, we actually had another application for new construction on these two lots last month that were disapproved. And it's the same applicant has made some revisions and come back again with some new plans. I think I passed around a corrected front page to the 112 recommendation. You'll see it there. The correct version was online, but some of you got the wrong one in the mail, just the front page. So these two lots are about 17 feet narrower than the typical lot width of the area. Typical lots are 50 feet wide. The revisions from the version last month they were 2-story houses. Now they're more like 1.5-story with a maximum roof height of 29 feet above grade from the front with eaves at 15 feet. And staff finds that this is more in keeping with the scale of houses in the surrounding context. There are dormers in the upper story to give additional ceiling height, and you'll see in the rear elevation that because grade drops toward the rear, that makes a basement level garage possible. These elevations are essentially the same for both 1112 and 1114, although there's an alternate version for one of the units. I suppose it could go either way, just having a different siding treatment. Instead of clapboard siding all the way up, it would be cement fiber shingle siding in the upper story. which of course helps to differentiate the two. I went into a good amount of detail, I think, in the staff recommendation, and in that it was recommending approval with some conditions regarding windows and materials and things like that. Since sending that out, we actually got some revised drawings that addressed all of those issues. And that's actually what's up on the screen are the revised elevations. Staff finds that with those revisions meeting the design guidelines, staff recommends approval of 1112 and 1114 Lillian Street, as submitted with the new drawings.
All right. Any questions of staff? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the commission on these?
I'd like to thank Sean for his help in working together to come up with a solution that works for all parties.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, okay. Then open for discussion.
I'd say it's a great improvement over the project last time, and unless anybody has anything to say, I would approve based on staff recommendations with the plans as submitted and presented today.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
I would like to thank the applicant for sticking with it and putting together a nice-looking project.
All right, okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? At 1114 and 1112 Lillian. 927 Boscombe.
927 Boscombe Street is an application for 927 Boscombe Street is an application for infill construction of a two-family residence. This non-contributing house on the site was administratively approved for demolition last month. Where's my site plan? The new building will be centered on the lot and meets the design guidelines for setback and rhythm of spacing. Gravel parking areas for vehicle access will be built at the rear of the lot. New sidewalks will be built from each unit to Boscombe Street. The new structure will be 36 feet wide at the front and will expand to 40 feet at a distance of 30 feet from its front wall. It will have a height of approximately 20 feet from grade at the front and will reach a maximum ridge height of 33 feet at the rear third of the house, approximately 76 feet from the front wall. Its height is within the range of contributing homes nearby. The size and height of the structure are appropriate for the context. Staff also finds the proposed infill to meet the design guidelines for materials, roof form, orientation, and site features. The front elevation drawings do not clearly show caps and bases for the porch columns, and staff ask that the columns have caps and bases when built. Staff finds that the proposed proportion and rhythm of openings meet design guidelines. In context, you can see the immediate neighboring buildings as well as contributing homes across the street on Boscombe Street at the bottom. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of infill construction at 927 Boscombe Street with the conditions that staff approve color of roofing material, windows and doors, porch columns have caps and bases, double and triple windows have a 4 to 6 inch mullion between them, and the privacy fence on the site plan to be no taller than 6 feet. Meeting these conditions, the project meets the design guidelines for the Edgefield Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. And the applicant was here.
Was here.
Oh, it's still with us. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for the staff?
Is staff comfortable with this? I know you are. Overall mass and scope of the project. I mean, everything else we see on the slides seems to be a little smaller. Is that?
It's within the range of what's nearby, sir.
All right, we'll open the public hearing. Would you like to come up and address the commission? Just state your name and address, please.
David Beard, architect with Building Ideas, and we agree to work with staff on all the rest of the things that need to be selected, column caps and roof colors and things like that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, okay. Any discussion?
I think, I don't want to presume what your question was, but it seems long. But I think from there's a couple ways to look at that. It could either be really tall at the street and shorter, or it's long, I think, and lean and pushes the mass towards the rear. It seems, well, 4,680 square feet is, of residence on a lot is a lot. I don't think it exceeds what this body has approved in the past on infill lots, and even on some historic lots with larger homes with additions.
Well, I think a lot of these homes are on very narrow lots, go very, very deep, in Edgefield. All right, okay.
Move approval with staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. $814 Boscoville.
All right, another one on Boscoville Street. This is an application to construct a rear addition to a historic house and to make some alterations to the historic portion. The alterations, or essentially repairs, would be include changing the asphalt siding on the gable fields of the historic house with cedar shakes, and originally to relocate and resize some windows on the historic portion. I think actually the applicant said they won't need to be doing that. So I guess as far as alterations to the existing, it would just entail the changing of asphalt shingle siding to cedar siding. Of course, this being a Craftsman-style bungalow, it is a contributing structure, and asphalt shingles were actually a common siding material in the 1920s. Houses constructed in Nashville often had asphalt shingle siding, some with decorative shaped shingles, scalloped or octagonal. These are not quite as ornate, but in all likelihood, they either are original or the original material was asphalt shingle, just with these being newer. In a historic preservation zoning overlay, repairs to contributing structures must be made in kind, meaning materials can be only replaced with like materials, unless it can be documented that the existing materials are not original. In that case, different replacement might be appropriate, but at this time, staff would only recommend that shingle siding be replaced with asphalt shingle siding. So that's it for the existing house. For the addition, it will be, as I said, a rear addition, 1.5 stories, or perhaps you could read it as 2. But it would set in from the sides of the historic house by 2 feet on each side, and then go back with the upper portion actually setting in an additional foot on either side, which helps to minimize the impact on the historic house and the visibility of it from the oblique views between this and adjacent houses. It will have a gabled roof running front to back, whereas the historic house is side gabled. That front to back ridge will be 3 feet higher than the original roof ridge, but pushed back more than, or just about 40 feet from the front of the house, 20 feet back from the ridge, and it'll be clipped at the front. You can see on there, so as to help minimize the visibility of that gable from the street. Here's a kind of a different view that helps show the perspective, shows the little guy down on the bottom from across the street. Because of the angle, the 3 foot higher ridge at the back won't really be very visible, especially with that clipped gable. We'd recommended that the shed dormers, sort of I called them gull wing dormers on the sides of the rear addition, that those dormer pitches be lowered so that the eaves are not higher than the original roof line, which you see up on number 2 of the front elevation, and the architects agreed to that as well. So it's another condition that has already been addressed. Materials of the addition would be cement fiber siding on the first story, board and batten type of cement fiber siding on the upper story, asphalt shingle roof. Staff asks typical to approve material samples for color and texture. That would also apply to a brick foundation on the addition. Staff also asks to approve windows, doors, walls, fences, and other appurtenances covered by the Edgefield design guidelines. And that's all there is to that. Staff recommends approval of the proposed addition with conditions that, original windows on the house are retained, and that original wood siding is retained, and that the new shingle siding be replaced with like materials. The applicants already agreed to that. That the eave of the dormers are lowered to they've not agreed to the shingle. That's one that they want to talk to you about. The eaves of the dormers are lower to the height of the ridge of the primary roof. They have agreed to that. And that staff approves doors, windows, brick, roof color, paving, walls, fences, and other exterior materials prior to selection. And in meeting those conditions, staff finds that the proposal meets the Edgefield Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay Design Guidelines. So that just leaves the asphalt shingle siding on the existing structure, I think, is the only outstanding item, and perhaps the applicant would like to talk to you about that.
Okay.
I can answer any questions as well. Try.
Any question?
Is there anything, I know we've approved the step up in the ridge after 40 feet and sometimes earlier. Is there anything in here that we haven't approved before? Because when I look at the left elevation, it seems to be, at least in my opinion, sort of maxing out, or right elevation, kind of maxing out what you can tack on to a little 1.5-story bungalow.
Yeah, it's certainly a large addition. I think the house
is bigger than the house.
36 feet front to, or 46 feet front to back, or something like that. And this is actually a little bit longer. So, yeah, it's substantial in that respect.
Have we made any decisions in the past about acknowledging the addition cannot be bigger than the house, or even trying to go down a road like that? This is more of a question rather than my opinion. It's a question.
Thanks.
Is something we struggle with a lot and have been struggling with for several years, but it's getting harder and harder. It's something the commission has looked at in terms of percentages, like maybe a house shouldn't be allowed to add more than 50% of the original square footage, but there were a lot of issues with that. There were some homes that were just tiny, 700 or 800 square feet. And so saying they can only add on 50% didn't seem reasonable. So there really hasn't been a one-size-fits-all solution at this point.
To that end, we run the risk of being, I think, or perceived as arbitrary, and I've not in folks in this room, but have argued with members of, have agreed with members of Metro Council that perhaps a historic zoning overlay is the wrong tool for the job in terms of size and massing and impervious surface and some of those other things.
Yeah, I don't disagree with a lot of that.
Yeah, I've just got a side question. We had one over in the Richland West End area, a real small, tiny home that just wanted, and we disapproved that. Wasn't that correct?
There probably was one like that. I know of one on Cambridge Avenue that is in Richland West End. It's similar in that the house is taller. That, I think, it's probably taller and narrower in much the same way. And I think it was approved, and the Historical Commission gave it an award. So I guess whatever, take that for whatever it's worth.
I just recall that this house is much bigger than the one that had been tacked on to the other.
I think it is.
All right.
I think you're right.
Okay, any other discussion or question for staff?
Yeah, I think I understand where everybody's coming from. If you just look at these elevations, you don't even sense like there's a historic house there. It's just that addition just overtakes that home. And I don't know if it's just a visual of a drawing. I mean, are you guys evidently totally on board, or?
The way the guidelines are written is that your main charge is how the properties proceed from the street. So that's what's pushing so much massing into the back on these additions, is because they can't really pop the roof and go up, and they can't go out to the side. So from the street, it won't be that noticeable. You know, maybe as you're walking down the street from one little corner or another, you can see back there. But from the street, it's not overwhelming the house. And as big as this is, I think it is probably in keeping with quite a number of other additions that have been approved over the last few years.
Is this preferable, do you think, to a ridge raise? When you're trying to get up? Because, I mean, it's driven by the very small second floor.
In some ways, and this is just my personal opinion, because the ridge raise is altering the form of the original house, and this is pushing all the change to the back.
Okay, let's let the architect come up and have his say before we have any more questions. You want to come up and...
I'm Preston Quirk, the architect for this project. My client, Clay Haynes, couldn't be here. He was in Washington. I think he had trouble getting out from some of the weather there, so he wasn't able to make it back today. As Sean commented, Sean and I have talked about the conditions the staff put on this. The first one about lowering the eaves of the dormers, we're fine with that. Number two, retaining the original windows, we're fine with that. Not sure if Sean made this real clear. There's a condition that the siding on the addition should be distinguished from the original house. The original house, I think, has it's a 7-inch exposure, thick butt lap siding. He wanted to do the same thing on the addition. He's willing to do like a 6-inch exposure or something, but would like that quality wood siding on there. I know sometimes we see an awful lot of hardy plank, but this guy really wants it quality. He's willing to do wood. So I hope the commission's agreeable to accepting a 6-inch siding. I think Sean indicated that might be acceptable. Then I'll jump to the last one and come back to the shingle siding issue. The last condition about staff approving doors, windows, brick, roof color, paving, walls, and fences, were totally agreeable to that condition. My client, he's not a big fan of the shingle siding, which I think you've probably heard before from people. You probably rarely, if ever, see a new house putting that as a gable material. I do fully understand the way the guidelines are written, that materials should be replaced with, in kind with similar materials. In coming today, I look back on the projects I can remember from the last 5 years that I may have had that had shingle siding in the gables, and there's only 3 that come to mind. One is 601 Fatherland, and actually I worked on an addition to that house, but when we started it, they had already re-sided the gables, and I don't know exactly what was there beforehand, although it may have been shakes on that. They went back with a wood shake. And then the one next door, 603 Fatherland, had a vinyl siding on it. He was allowed to put back wood shakes on that. I don't know exactly what was there when the siding came off, but maybe there was some evidence that it had been shakes. And then there was another one at 1301 Fatherland that just had a small gable on the front that had asphalt shingles in it, and he did retain them. So I bring that up. I don't know if there's been other cases before the commission where people have requested shakes in lieu of this shingle siding. It's just, it's not a material people are excited about, but I'll admit in this case, I think the evidence is that it was here. It may be the original material on the house. There's some places on that right side view where there's a darker, like black color underneath, and then the current one is kind of a light gray. So, I guess I'm going to kind of leave that up to you, how you want to rule on that issue. My client would much prefer to put shakes up there, and, we could do them in a color or style that was as close to the shingles as possible. And if you want it replaced in kind, that's what we'll do. So. And one other comment just about the massing issue on this. And I think he was sensitive to this in working on the design. I don't know that Sean showed a contextual picture of that, but there's 2 kind of Italianate houses either side of it that They don't show up real well in that picture, but the house is much closer to the house on the right, probably 8 to 10 feet off of that house. And that house is fairly tall, and the one on the left is also tall, but we set back. We've got that wing on the left side of this house that kind of helps shield the addition, and we're set back further from the left side of the house than we are on the right. So we've tried to be sensitive to that issue, and I mean, we've had that discussion before on projects and some of my clients as well. And you know, it's everything Robin said. It's hard to keep these additions down in size sometimes, and we try. So, you know, I think the best thing we can do is kind of look at the context and try to respect what's beside you. So.
Preston, on the asphalt shingles, I say familiar, I'm really not that familiar, but I mean, I certainly see historically, I mean, those things were beefy. I mean, they weren't like a little 3-tab number where you nail it up there. I'm familiar with some asphalt shingle, and it looks like from the picture that they may have a little more meat to them. Is there a like kind? Is that just a visual? Are they have they curled up so badly over the years that that's an illusion, or is there a like kind material that you could approach what's, you know, obviously the 3-tab on the top is not historic, but have you looked closely at the other, and is it something that is available in the marketplace?
You know, it's a good question, Ben, because I think a lot of what you're seeing in the picture is them being curled up. Okay. We honestly haven't gotten up on a ladder up there and pulled them off. And I mean, there could even be shakes under there. If we pull them off and find there's something else, we'll certainly, you know, talk to the commission and have them come out and look at it. But and I'm familiar with what I've seen some of that simulated brick shingle siding that they had that was, I think, done around World War II. Yeah. I mean, some of that stuff it's a 1/4 inch thick. It was a beefy product, but I'm not sure that these were ever that kind of thing. Okay. And I do think, I mean, it's a valid comment too, because I think shingles, you know, from the time asphalt shingles first came out, they probably were twice as thick as they are today. You know, they were asphalt and whatever fiber was in there, probably asbestos or something. But, you know, now they're, you know, fiberglass and as thin as they can to last 20, 25, 30 years. So, yeah.
From the appearance, they look to have a lot more. They look more shake-like, but again, that could be the curling and just the deterioration.
I think a lot of it is you've got to. I almost suspect you may have a 60-year-old layer underneath and a 30-year-old layer on top of it. The house is kind of in disrepair with rental property when he bought it. So
okay,
that's all right. About all I know without having been on a ladder up there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Close the public hearing and have open for discussion.
So just perspective on the massing, Commissioner. On page 2 of the handout, look at the aerial map. And it does show some neighboring properties that have, you know, pretty good far back. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's good. I think it brings us just to the shingle issue and replacing materials with like kind, and I think if there's a compelling reason, perhaps with modern materials, that I don't know that shakes would be offensive, certainly necessarily, and would perhaps give an equal or equivalent amount of visual treatment of that upper area. I would be willing to stand behind that as a from an appearance standpoint, but certainly that doesn't meet to the letter of in a historic district. We'd need to come up maybe with something more compelling to or if there were some evidence that you know, in further investigation the applicant had that certainly an alternative material would always be appropriate in that regard if it were not original to the house. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on the asphalt shingles and
well, I'm looking at the
oil needed to produce them and
the guidelines now, and it talks about materials, but I don't think it necessarily, at least, you know, there could be something I'm missing, but I don't think it necessarily says that you have to use the exact same material. It just says new materials need to match the design, dimension, detail, and other visual characteristics. So I don't know that it needs to be asphalt if there's another product that meets these other design, dimension, detail, and visual characteristics, unless we've interpreted it that way over time.
I think that may be where the and the staff can certainly speak to that more with more history in it than I, is that it probably has a little bit to do with interpretation, but in a historic conservation overlay, not historic overlay, which this is in, that is there's less leeway in terms of like for like. I've certainly been involved in projects and heard that on a consistent basis with wood windows or wood siding or some of those other things.
Things like that.
So I don't know if the Secretary of Interior Standards speaks to that. I know certainly some of their white papers do.
Just to give you a little background, the director, Tim Walker, obviously has been here much longer than I have, and he tells us that the asphalt shingles have always been retained or replaced with asphalt shingles because it is a historic material. So that's the precedent.
Okay.
I mean, it seems to me it's not something that we ought to break precedent on.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, entertain a motion.
Move approval based on staff recommendations.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. 2623 Essex.
We're all on the same side.
Stricter interpretation.
Start to hit the bumps early.
All right. Two more. They're connected, but I will present them separately just to stretch it out a little longer. So 2326 Essex Place, just sort of overview a little bit. These properties here that you see in the picture, 2623 Essex, actually faces Natchez Trace. In the middle is 2116 Natchez Trace, and on the right is 2118 Natchez Trace. Those three buildings are non-contributing duplexes that all obviously face Natchez Trace, and this development concept essentially demolishes those and replaces them with three new single-family structures. And of course, since those are non-contributing, demolition is appropriate. The new plan, as I said, three single-family structures, will reorient the property line somewhat so that Building C is essentially where 2118 is now. The other two are rotated so that they'll face Essex, which is more in keeping with the historic street rhythm and orientation of that area. So I guess just at this view, the site plan, staff finds that orientation is appropriate. Probably just a detail of the drawings or the contours of the plans. It wasn't clear, so staff just wants to make sure by recommending that a walkway be added from the fronts of any new building to engage the streets, the new street, which for A and B, of course, would be Essex Place. This application, and I guess while we're still here on the site plan, I'm starting now with A, Building A, which will become and will be known as 2623 Essex. I'll do B next, and C will be not this month. So Building A will be a two-story house with a hipped roof and a gabled front stoop, shallow, or I guess you'd call it a porch, but it's partially recessed and only sticks out 3 feet from the face of the building. 3 feet, I think. The overall height will be 29 feet, with the width at the front of the building at 39 feet. Staff finds that this massing is within the range of heights and widths you find on surrounding historic buildings. The materials include cement fiber siding on the first story, wood shingles on the upper story, with an asphalt shingle roof and parged concrete foundation. Staff just asks to approve color material samples for color and texture. Primarily, that's the roof there. And to approve the materials that aren't labeled on the drawings, like porch columns. Yeah, it just says square. So we need to know the material of that, window casings, other trims, and also to approve windows and doors themselves. Additionally, on this elevation, staff recommends that any upper story shutters there be operable, but otherwise that they be eliminated. Faux shutters have not been approved by the commission. So that's it for the front. Here's the side elevation. Staff finds that the proportion and rhythm of windows on front and both sides is appropriate. And staff recommends approval of the proposed application for 2623 Essex Place with the conditions that the exterior materials be approved by staff, that the color of the roof is approved by staff, that shutters on the front elevation are operable or that they be omitted, and that a front walkway is added to engage the street. And in meeting those conditions, staff finds that this application meets the design guidelines for Hillsborough West End.
I have a question. Was this, these were 3 lots, or was it 1 lot? It's just been re-subdivided?
Yeah.
Has been subdivided.
3 lots that had, that had duplexes. So that one at the top on.
I mean, the lot lines were off of Natchez?
They're reoriented.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so they
Same
just
number of lots,
re-subdivided it.
actually
Okay.
going from 6 units down to 3.
Okay, all right. Sean?
Did I miss the discussion on is there a garage?
The site plan for buildings A and B show garages, but the plans
Site plan does show garages, but elevations and plans for the garages themselves have not been submitted. So we're just doing the primary building.
Okay.
Okay. All right, if there are no questions of Sean, would you like to come up and address the commission?
Might I?
Sorry.
Quick question for staff, maybe to shorten the distance for the applicant. Is 2625, while not identical, it appears that is same recommendation?
It is. It is a recommendation for approval with the same conditions on materials and walkway, but it didn't have shutters, so that's the only real difference.
Might we quickly just run through those slides and make a presentation for the applicants in the interest of everyone's time, and have the applicant speak once? And
Sure. So building B there is more of a, it is also 2 stories, but it's more of a gable L, I suppose, Tudor style. Brick on the first story, which staff would approve a brick sample, would ask to approve a brick sample, as well as other materials, windows, doors, color of the roof. Side elevations, the window proportions and rhythm are appropriate, and staff recommends approval with conditions of staff approval of materials and the walkway from the front porch to the street.
Okay. All right. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Ward with Allard Ward Architects. We've been working with Rob and Colleen of JK Construction on these 3 houses for several weeks. These are the first 2. Lot C will come later. We sort of ran out of time trying to get these 2 up and ready, but construction it'll be a little bit easier to build 2 on that other lot. And we'll bring garages forth later. Perfectly happy and would definitely have sidewalk connections to the public sidewalk. I think the big thing here is reorienting these lots, which I think Robin gave them really good guidance on very early on in the process. They've still got to get it replatted and get a couple things sort of worked out, but I think in terms of sort of fitting in with the neighborhood, these facing Essex is going to be much more sort of in keeping with a typical street rhythm, whereas Lot C will be the only one that will truly face Natchez Trace. The massing and form have a lot to do with where they're placed on these lots. The 4 square makes more sense on an interior lot, coming up with a roof line that is a little bit more sort of softer and easier for the Natchez Trace elevation for B seemed like a good idea at the time, and a little bit steeper pitch. We worked really closely with staff on height. Luckily for us, there's a new house up the house next door to us on Essex. Is sort of a good one to go by. We've been letting that one sort of help us set precedent, working toward this volume. And the shutters will definitely be operable. We don't do shutters very often, but part of the challenge too, especially when you're doing a lot of infill, is sort of looking at details that are good for the neighborhood and trying not to use the same window over and over again for every house, but sort of creating some difference, some individuality in these elevations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Open for discussion or a motion?
I move approval with staff recommendations with the additional note that as the site plan was presented as a whole, and that, seeing the existing structure on Natchez, given what this is replacing and that it's kind of an all or, I don't want to say it's an all or nothing development, but since C's not before us, setbacks, certainly we'll review C when we come to it, but as a whole, I think with curb cuts and everything that works, this is definite improvement over what was there, and I think appears to be keeping with the guidelines as a total lot. Since it's not quite subdivided, just wanted to make that additional comment.
Okay.
While not part of the application per se on item C.
So your motion is that you are approving staff recommendations?
Yes. For both A and B, that would be
26.
for both A and B, 2623 and 2625 in a single motion.
I'll second that, and then just wanted to make one comment that am I correct that it doesn't include any outbuildings, and a question of should it be subject to replatting as presented today, just in case the lot lines ended up different.
So noted.
Okay, then I have a motion and a second. Do I have a second?
Aaron. Second.
Okay. All in favor, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Old House Fair, March 8th.
All right, any other business? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? All right.
Second.
A single dissent.
I know.
I'm disappointed.